Chapter 1385. In front of him was Elder Qin, a terrifying false god, and behind him was Lu Xingqian, an existence that was not inferior to a false god. In addition, everything happened so suddenly that the imperial advisor had no time to counterattack. No, when Zhuge Wuhou, Zhuge Nanhua, and the others saw this scene, they couldn't help but anxiously roar in their hearts. As for the Kirin army's commander, his face was filled with excitement. He was finally going to get rid of this ambitious person. And at this time, Emperor Hong, who had been watching coldly from the sidelines, also moved. The aura he emitted was even stronger than the imperial advisor and Elder Qin. Without a doubt, Emperor Hong was the same as Mu Changfeng. He was also a supreme existence at the peak of the false god realm. Facing Elder Qin, Lu Xingqian, and Emperor Hong, these three great false gods, if nothing unexpected happened, the imperial advisor would undoubtedly die today. But, just as the imperial advisor was about to die, Emperor Hong suddenly slapped Elder Qin's back. Puffed! Elder Qin immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and flew out like a kite with a broken string. This unforeseen event not only caught Lu Xingqian and Qin Feiyang off guard, but everyone present was also stunned. Originally, everyone thought that Emperor Hong was going to kill the imperial advisor, but they never thought that his target was actually Elder Qin. What's going on? Everyone's hearts were filled with doubts. The situation had changed too quickly, hadn't it? Just as Emperor Hong made his move on Elder Qin, the originally panicked imperial advisor's old face suddenly revealed a cold light, and he slapped his palm towards Lu Xingqian's divine sense. Boom! Lu Xingqian's divine sense was destroyed on the spot. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, and just like Elder Qin, he was sent flying, his face deathly pale. This strength! Lu Xingqian looked at the imperial advisor in shock. Why is it like this? Qin Feiyang muttered. Why would Emperor Hong help the imperial advisor to plot against Elder Qin? This result was completely out of his expectations. Above the sky, Emperor Hong looked at Lu Xingqian, a cold light surging in his eyes, and said, "This old man has been waiting for you for a long time." Finished speaking, Emperor Hong and the state preceptor looked at each other and joined hands to attack Lu Xingqian. Waiting for me? Lu Xingqian was bewildered. Emperor Hong said, "I've long heard from Imperial Preceptor that Qin Feiyang has a false god hidden by his side, so this old man has always been very curious. Just who is this false god? Are you luring me out?" Lu Xingqian was both shocked and angry. "That's right. However, although I've successfully lured you out, this old man is even more puzzled after seeing you in person. You are only a 5-star combat emperor. Why do you have a divine consciousness?" Emperor Hong asked suspiciously. Although he was speaking, his speed was not slow at all. Before he finished speaking, Emperor Hong and the state preceptor arrived in front of Lu Xingqian, grabbing at Lu Xingqian from both sides. "Qin Feiyang, you bastard! How dare you betray me?" When Lu Xingqian heard Emperor Hong's words, he immediately lowered his head and roared at Qin Feiyang. He thought that Qin Feiyang was also involved. Not daring to have the slightest doubt, he immediately prepared to enter the spatial divine object. Boom! However, at almost the same time, Emperor Hong and the state preceptor released their might, imprisoning Lu Xingqian in the air. Seeing that Lu Xingqian was imprisoned, the two of them did not immediately kill him. What? But seeing the state preceptor's might, Lu Xingqian's expression changed. Qin Feiyang's expression also changed abruptly. They all knew that Emperor Hong was a supreme existence at the peak of the false god realm. However, the state preceptor's might was not the slightest bit inferior to Emperor Hong's. What was going on? The state preceptor glanced at Qin Feiyang, then looked at Lu Xingqian, and sneered. "You guys look very surprised. You've been hiding your cultivation all this time?" Lu Xingqian said in a deep voice. "No, I didn't hide it. It's just that I was lucky. A few days ago, I just broke through to the peak of the false god realm," the state preceptor said. What? Qin Feiyang's mind trembled. Why didn't Yanwei tell him such an important thing? Did the state preceptor not reveal it? Or had Yanwei's identity been discovered, and the state preceptor deliberately hid it from him? "Your face should be fake. I'm very curious, who are you?" The state preceptor smiled coldly, took out a facial restoration pill, and stuffed it into Lu Xingqian's mouth. Soon, Lu Xingqian recovered his true appearance. How could it be you? Looking at Lu Xingqian's face, the state preceptor's face was full of disbelief. Below, those who knew Lu Xingqian were also surprised. Wasn't he a disciple of the temple? How could he be a false god? No, he wasn't a false god. He just had the divine sense of a war god. Old Qin had also stabilized his body, standing in the void in the distance, glanced at Lu Xingqian, then looked at Emperor Hong, and said angrily, "Why? In this world, how can there be so many whys?" Emperor Hong snorted coldly, looked at Lu Xingqian and asked, "Who the hell are you? Why have I never seen you before?" "Who am I?" Lu Xingqian murmured. At the same time, Old Qin took a step forward and rushed towards Qin Feiyang. The situation suddenly became like this. This place was no longer a place to stay for a long time. He had to take Qin Feiyang away as soon as possible. Stop him. But suddenly, Emperor Hong shouted. Boom. 3 terrifying auras burst out from the ground. 2 of them came from the crowd outside the square. They were 2 old men, with white hair and vast divine power. 2 more false gods. People retreated in horror. What was going on today? Why did so many false gods pop out at once? The 2 old men looked at each other and rushed into the sky like lightning. They raised their big hands and slapped Old Man Qin's chest from the left and right. Old Man Qin was sent flying again. Old Man Qin spurted out blood. His entire chest caved in and his ribs were all shattered. Even his heart was broken. But a broken heart was nothing to a false god. Old Qin stabilized himself in the void, clutching his chest, looking gloomily at the 2 old men and said, "You guys actually came out of seclusion." The 2 old men were silent, their eyes flashing with a cold light. Wait. Where is the other divine power? The people looked around in surprise. Suddenly, their gazes were locked on the head eunuch in the center of the square. That divine power came from the head eunuch. At this moment, Qin Feiyang and the commander of the Kirin army, as well as Lei Bao, were all imprisoned by the head eunuch. The eyes of the 2 men and 1 beast were also filled with shock. They all knew the strength of the head eunuch. It was impossible for him to be a false god. There must be something fishy going on. As if seeing through Qin Feiyang and Lei Bao's thoughts, the head eunuch smiled contemptuously, took out a facial restoration pill, and put it into his mouth. This head eunuch is a disguise. Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. Soon, the head eunuch turned into another face. It was an old man with white hair and a pale face. The old man in front of him, as well as the 2 people blocking old Qin Feiyang was no stranger to them. They were the 3 false gods that sealed themselves in the back mountain of the imperial palace. Why were all 3 of them here? He had clearly taken out the evidence of the imperial preceptor forging the imperial jade seal, so why did Emperor Hong attack old Qin? If Emperor Hong's goal was Lu Xingqian, then now that his goal had been achieved, why did he still attack him? At this moment, Qin Feiyang's mind was in a mess. All of this was far beyond his expectations. It seems that I have misunderstood Qin Feiyang. Seeing Qin Feiyang's situation, Lu Xingqian secretly muttered, but soon after, countless questions crawled up in his heart. What the hell is going on? The imperial preceptor looked at Lu Xingqian, Qin Feiyang, old Qin, and the commander of the Kirin army and sneered. Today, none of you can escape. After saying that, he looked at Lu Xingqian and shouted. Quickly answer Emperor Hong's words, who are you? Me? The corner of Lu Xingqian's mouth lifted, and said with a smile. I am the person you don't want to see the most. Scaring imperial preceptor? The imperial preceptor said. Look at me, do I look like I'm scaring you? But now, I don't want to tell you. Lu Xingqian said. I'm afraid that's not up to you. The imperial preceptor sneered. You don't really think that with this level of pressure, you can control me? Let me tell you, you're too naive. Lu Xingqian raised his head and roared. More than a dozen strands of divine sense flew out from the top of his head, directly shattering the majesty of the imperial preceptor and Emperor Hong. Such a strong divine sense. Their expressions changed. I, Lu Xingqian, will remember today's debt. In the future, I will definitely repay it double. Qin Feiyang, you're on your own. Lu Xingqian smiled coldly and instantly disappeared without a trace. Facing two peak false gods, he really didn't dare to stay any longer, nor did he have the strength to help Qin Feiyang. Emperor Hong and Emperor Hong were furious. Their divine sense surged out, covering the sky and earth as it surged in all directions. In just an instant, they captured Lu Xingqian's spatial divine object. But just as they were about to intercept, 10 figures appeared in the sky above the imperial city without any warning. They were all wearing masks so their faces couldn't be seen clearly. However, the aura emitted by each of them was incomparably terrifying. Who are they? Everyone looked at the 10 people in surprise. Emperor Hong, the imperial preceptor, and the 3 old men were also extremely surprised. Because with their eyesight, they could tell at a glance that these 10 people were all false gods. 10 people stood side by side in the void, as if 10 gods had descended, coldly scanning everyone. Anyone who had been looked at by them couldn't help but feel a deep fear in their hearts. "Greetings, young master." Suddenly, the 10 of them uniformly landed in front of Qin Feiyang and bowed. What? They are all Qin Feiyang's subordinates. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded, including Elder Qin, the commander of the Kirin army, Lei Bao. The imperial preceptor, Emperor Hong, and the 3 old men were also in disbelief. Qin Feiyang actually had 10 false gods under his command? What kind of joke was this? He must be dreaming. Lu Xingqian, who was about to escape, also had a face of astonishment. Mu Qing, who was next to him, even had his eyes popping out. Not to mention them, Qin Feiyang himself was also dumbfounded. Suddenly, 10 false gods popped out and said that they were his subordinates? Was it really not the heavens joking with him? "Young master, we came late to save you, please forgive us." One of them spoke. However, as he spoke, he gave Qin Feiyang a meaningful glance without leaving any trace. "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. Seeing that Qin Feiyang didn't understand, the man sent a sound transmission. "This place is not suitable to stay for long, leave immediately." Finished. With a wave of his hand, the pressure that imprisoned Qin Feiyang and the commander of the Kirin army instantly disappeared. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and without hesitation, he reached out his big hand, grabbed the commander of the Kirin army and Lei Bao, and entered the castle. After entering the castle, he didn't stay for a moment and immediately drove the castle away. Seeing Qin Feiyang slip away, Lu Xingqian also quickly slipped away. "Damn it! Who are you? Why are you interfering in my great Qin's affairs?" The imperial preceptor roared. Emperor Hong's face was also extremely ugly. "We don't care about your great Qin's affairs at all. We only care about the safety of the young master." Chapter 1386. Young Lord. The imperial preceptor muttered to himself and roared, "He's just a brat. What ability does he have to make you fake gods work for him?" His expression was hysterical. That person said indifferently, "Don't underestimate the young lord, because sooner or later, he will let you taste true despair. This imperial preceptor wants to taste it now. If you have the guts, call him back and fight one-on-one with this imperial preceptor." The imperial preceptor roared again and again. The meat that had reached his mouth did not fall off just like that. This kind of sullen feeling almost made him go crazy. "One-on-one. Don't you feel ashamed to say such words?" That person laughed mockingly. The other 9 people also revealed looks of disdain towards the imperial preceptor. A dignified fake god actually wanted to fight a 4-star war emperor one-on-one? Wasn't this a joke? Whoosh. The 10 of them did not waste any more words and rushed into the sky one after another, landing beside Elder Qin. The 2 people who were blocking Elder Qin immediately became nervous. The 10 of them looked at the 2 of them and did not say a word. Bringing Elder Qin, they turned around and left. "Halt!" The imperial preceptor was unable to restrain his anger as he shouted, "What kind of place do you think the imperial city is? How can you come and go as you please?" But the 10 of them did not pay attention to him at all. The imperial preceptor was about to chase after them when Emperor Hong reached out to stop him. He shook his head and said, "Forget it." The imperial preceptor raised his eyebrows and said, "Emperor Hong, they are openly provoking the imperial power." But without waiting for the imperial preceptor to finish speaking, Emperor Hong opened his mouth and said, "Of course this old man knows that they are deliberately provoking us, but what can we do if we leave them behind?" The imperial preceptor fell silent. The other party had 10 fake gods. Including Elder Qin, it was 11. Although he and Emperor Hong were both peak fake gods, and there were still 3 fake gods below them, if they really fought, it would probably be a situation where both sides would suffer. However, he was really unwilling to give up just like that. Emperor Hong patted the imperial preceptor's shoulder and comforted him. "There will be plenty of time in the future. There will always be a chance." Sigh. The imperial preceptor sighed deeply and followed Emperor Hong to the center of the plaza. The 3 old men also immediately landed behind Emperor Hong and stood respectfully. And throughout the entire process, the little prince who was sitting on the dragon throne did not say a single word. He sat there, watching all of this expressionlessly. In a trance, everyone had the misconception that the little prince seemed to have grown several decades in an instant, giving off a profound feeling. Emperor Hong glanced at the little prince, turned his head to look at the civil and military officials, and said, "I believe that everyone has a lot of questions in their hearts right now. Raise them all. This old man will answer them one by one." The Marquis of Xiaowu was the first to walk out. He cupped his hands and said, "Lord Emperor Hong, previously, Qin Feiyang had already confirmed that the Imperial Advisor was forging the Imperial Jade Seal. However, why did Lord Emperor Hong not punish the Imperial Advisor according to the law and instead attack Qin Feiyang?" Emperor Hong pondered for a moment and said, "This matter is an enormous humiliation to our great Qin. This old man truly does not wish to speak of it. Lord Emperor Hong, please tell me the truth." "Yes." If Lord Emperor Hong doesn't say anything, we can't help but suspect that Lord Emperor Hong might have some selfish motives. A few prestigious old ministers stood out and said, "How dare you? As the son of the previous emperor, how could Lord Emperor Hong have any selfish motives?" The Imperial Advisor said angrily. "Imperial Advisor, don't blame them. They said this because they are concerned about the safety of our great Qin." Emperor Hong waved his hand and said, "Yes." The Imperial Advisor nodded respectfully. Next, Emperor Hong swept his gaze across the civil and military officials and asked, "Do you really want to know?" Everyone nodded. The people outside the square were also curious. Sigh. Emperor Hong let out a long sigh and said, "Fine, this old man will tell everyone the truth. In fact, the previous emperor did not abdicate because he broke through to the false god realm." The previous emperor was naturally referring to the little prince's father. Everyone was bewildered. Marquis Xiao asked, "Then what is the reason?" "He's dead," Emperor Hong said. "What? His Majesty is dead? How is this possible? Who dares to kill His Majesty?" This place immediately exploded. Everyone's face was filled with disbelief. "Everyone be quiet," Emperor Hong said. In an instant, the entire audience quieted down. Emperor Hong sighed and said, "The person who killed the emperor is none other than the emperor's own son, Qin Feiyang." Everyone once again fell into shock. Back then, the Imperial Advisor had something to discuss with the emperor, but the emperor was in the Imperial study and did not respond for a long time. The Imperial Advisor felt that something was wrong and hurriedly pushed open the door of the Imperial study. As a result, he found the emperor's body on the ground. And the Imperial Jade Seal had also disappeared. When the Imperial Advisor saw this scene, he immediately informed this old man. When this old man rushed over, the emperor had already died. At that time, this old man was very angry. Someone actually dared to murder the emperor of my great Qin. So this old man immediately asked the Imperial Advisor to send someone to look for this murderer, but this person did it too secretly, and we had no trace of him at all. Later, this old man and the Imperial Advisor discussed and decided to set up a trap to lure this person out. Emperor Hong said. Marquis Xiao said, "So you announced to the outside world that His Majesty had broken through to the false god realm, and was going to give up the throne to the little prince?" "Yes. This person killed the emperor and took away the Imperial Jade Seal. He definitely wants to get his hands on my great Qin's rivers and mountains." Thinking of this, This old man immediately asked the imperial advisor to forge an imperial jade seal and announce the news of the little prince's succession. If this person is really coveting my great Qin's rivers and mountains, he will definitely appear on the day of the little prince's succession. Sure enough, as we expected, this person appeared. But this old man never thought that he was actually Qin Feiyang. Emperor Hong said with a pained heart. Bastard! For the sake of the throne, he even killed his own father. This Qin Feiyang is simply crazy. Everyone immediately roared. Isn't that so? But we also know that Qin Feiyang has a false god protecting him, so when Qin Feiyang took out the imperial jade seal, Emperor Hong did not expose him at the first moment. Instead, he attacked me together with old Qin. He did this to lure out the false god beside Qin Feiyang. The imperial advisor said. So that's how it is. Everyone nodded in realization. Marquis Qianwu asked. In that case, old Qin and the commander of the Kirin army also had a part in killing His Majesty? Yes. They have long been bribed by Qin Feiyang. Emperor Hong nodded. How preposterous. His Majesty's kindness to them is as heavy as a mountain. They actually colluded with Qin Feiyang to secretly harm His Majesty and usurp the throne. They deserve to die 10,000 times. A furious roar sounded out from the crowd. It was Zhuge Wuho who was roaring. He was fanning the flames, because this way, everyone's hatred for Qin Feiyang and the other two would rise to a whole new level. As expected. Hearing his words, everyone present was filled with anger. Wait. But suddenly, a voice sounded. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice, only to see that the one who spoke was Marquis Xiao. Marquis Xiao, do you have any other questions? The imperial advisor asked patiently. Marquis Xiao said. This subject does not dare to doubt Lord Emperor Hong's words, but after this subject finished listening, a few difficult questions arose in his heart. Speak. Emperor Hong said. As far as I know, when the previous emperor created the imperial jade seal, he had fused with the purple gold dragon blood. As for the imperial advisor, even you, Lord Emperor Hong, could not distinguish the fake imperial jade seal. It is enough to see that it must have also fused with the purple gold dragon blood. But in today's world, only Qin Feiyang has the purple gold dragon blood. And before, Qin Feiyang also said that the imperial advisor went to him to ask for the purple gold dragon blood. And Qin Feiyang also left a mark at the bottom. I want to ask, if Qin Feiyang really wants to usurp the throne, why did he give the imperial advisor the purple gold dragon blood? This is the first question. The second. Qin Feiyang is not stupid. On the contrary, he is very smart. His Majesty is dead, and the imperial jade seal is missing. It is impossible for him not to know. Once he takes out the imperial jade seal, it is equivalent to admitting that he secretly harmed His Majesty. So in my opinion, this is very unreasonable. Frankly speaking, not to mention a shrewd person like Qin Feiyang, even if it was a stupid person like me, I would not take out the imperial jade seal in public when the little prince succeeded the throne. Marquis Xiao said. If Qin Feiyang was here, he would definitely look at Marquis Xiao in a new light. Among the civil and military officials and the various marquises, there was at least one person with a little rationality. This old man has also thought about these two questions carefully. According to this old man's analysis, Qin Feiyang should have full confidence in himself and doesn't care if the matter is exposed. After all, everyone saw just now that he has a total of 10 false gods by his side. If he is exposed, he can suppress them with force. But what he didn't expect was that the imperial advisor's cultivation had broken through some time ago. A peak false god can completely restrain 3 or 4 ordinary false gods. The imperial advisor, this old man, and these 3 close friends behind this old man made him fearful, and did not dare to continue fighting with the little prince. Therefore he chose to retreat. But this old man believes that sooner or later, he will make a comeback. Therefore this old man hopes that no matter who sees Qin Feiyang in the future, they will report to the imperial advisor as soon as possible. Emperor Hong said. This subject obeys. The ministers bowed and said. Marquis Xiao pondered for a moment, then said. What Lord Emperor Hong said makes sense, but not long ago, Qin Feiyang also said in public that he would not fight with the little prince for the throne. This is just his one-sided words. When we get rid of the imperial advisor, we might not only kill the little prince, but also kill everyone who stops him, including this old man's great-grandfather. Emperor Hong said. Ooh. Marquis Xiao took a deep breath, bowed and said, if it is really as Lord Emperor Hong said, then this Qin Feiyang is really crazy. Emperor Hong looked at him indifferently, then scanned the crowd and asked, who else has a question? The group of ministers shook their heads. Zhuge Wuhou glanced at the ministers beside him, his eyes flashing slightly as he stepped forward and said, this subject has a question. Speak. Emperor Hong said. Zhuge Wuhou said, this old subject would like to ask, does the little prince's succession still count? Of course. Right now the little prince is the emperor of my great Qin. The imperial advisor will personally assist him, and all of you must serve the little prince wholeheartedly. Emperor Hong said. We obey Emperor Hong's orders. The ministers knelt down. Greetings, Your Majesty. Chapter 1387. At the same time, Qin Feiyang drove the ancient castle and fled into a deep mountain forest. This place was hundreds of thousands of miles away from the imperial capital, and along the way he didn't leave any traces. Unless there was someone like Mu Qing beside the imperial tutor and Emperor Hong, it would be difficult to find him. However, up until now he was still in a half-awake state. He couldn't figure out why Emperor Hong would do this. This Emperor Hong's performance is really puzzling. Lu Zheng and the commander of the Kirin army also frowned. Wolf King, Fatso Wang Yangfeng, and the others also had a worried look on their faces. Qin Feiyang's plan this time could be said to be flawless. It had even succeeded. But they never thought that because of Emperor Hong, this plan would fail. They couldn't figure it out. Why did Emperor Hong treat Qin Feiyang like this? Why did Qin Feiyang do this? Wasn't it for the safety of the great Qin Empire, for the sake of the millions of people? It could be said that in this matter, Qin Feiyang didn't have any selfish motives. He just wanted to get rid of the imperial tutor and the Zhuge family, this cancer, and return peace to the great Qin Empire. But why did Emperor Hong still do such a thing to hurt Qin Feiyang's heart? Time passed breath by breath. Buzz. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's image crystal sounded. Everyone was awakened at this moment and looked at Qin Feiyang. Who? Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, calmed down his emotions, and took out the image crystal. Yan Wei's shadow immediately condensed. Something bad is going on. Seeing Qin Feiyang, Yan Wei immediately said, his face full of anxiety. Hearing this, everyone's face immediately sank. With Yan Wei's character, under normal circumstances, he would never be so anxious. Qin Feiyang asked, what's the matter? Emperor Hong and the imperial advisor framed you, saying that you killed the emperor in the imperial study and stole the imperial jade seal. Yan Wei immediately explained the situation after Qin Feiyang left in detail. What a bunch of lies. Too much, too much. This old thing, how can he slander boss like this? After listening, Fatso was furious. Wolf King, Lu Hong, Run Wushuang, Wang Yangfeng, and the others were also furious. We all know that Emperor Hong is slandering young master, but the people of Great Qin don't know. Right now, the entire imperial capital is abuzz with rumors that the young master is a heartless person who doesn't even recognize his own family. Young master, I really feel sorry for you. You've worked so hard to protect Great Qin, but what's the result? Not only did he not get any benefits, but he also ended up with a bad reputation. Yan Wei sighed. Fatso and the others also looked at Qin Feiyang, their faces full of grief and indignation. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, before doing this, I never thought that I would be able to get any benefits. You can still laugh. Wolf King glared at him. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and shook his head. If it were before, my heart would definitely be like you, filled with anger and unwillingness. But now these can no longer affect my emotions. Your endurance is really admirable. Lei Bao snorted coldly. There was a trace of ridicule in his words. Lu Zheng heard Lei Bao's words, shook his head and sighed. This is not a question of whether I can endure it or not. Then what is it? Lei Bao raised his eyebrows. It's a kind of despair. Right now little cousin doesn't have any hope for the great Qin, the descendants of the Qin bloodline, or Emperor Hong. In short, he has completely given up on Emperor Hong and the others. So, these things naturally can't affect him. Lu Zheng said. Lei Bao fell silent. It didn't understand before why a noble son of an emperor would fall to such a state. Why did he hate the people of the imperial palace so much? But now it understood. This was all forced out of him by his family. Qin Feiyang glanced at Lu Zheng. He didn't expect this amazing cousin to know him so well. He looked at Yan Wei and asked, "Is the imperial preceptor already suspecting your identity?" Yan Wei was stunned and puzzled. "No, why do you say that? Since he doesn't suspect you, why didn't he tell you about breaking through to the peak of the pseudo-divinity realm?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "So that's it." Yan Wei suddenly understood and said with a smile, "There's no problem because even Zhuge Wuhou, Zhuge Nanhua, and the others don't know that he has broken through." Qin Feiyang let out a long breath and shook his head. "I thought he had found out about your identity and deliberately hid it from you." Yan Wei said, "This old fox is so cautious. He hides many things in his heart. Then you'd better be careful. Don't let him get hold of your weakness," Qin Feiyang reminded. "I understand." Yan Wei nodded. Suddenly he seemed to have thought of something and said, "By the way, there's one more thing that I only learned about after." "What is it?" Qin Feiyang asked. Yan Wei said, "The chief eunuch has been killed." Qin Feiyang said with a cold smile, "This old fogey is really vicious and merciless." Yan Wei glanced at the Kirin army commander beside Qin Feiyang and said, "Also, old Qin and the commander have been accused of treason by the imperial preceptor." "What?" The Kirin army commander's body stiffened. Fatso glanced at the Kirin army commander and snorted. "You were clearly doing it for the good of the great Qin, but in the end, you were accused of treason. Now you can understand how boss felt in the past, right?" The Kirin army commander's face was full of bitter smiles. Frankly speaking, he was indeed very dissatisfied with Qin Feiyang's way of doing things in the past. But at that time it was because he didn't understand Qin Feiyang. After this incident, he understood that he couldn't blame Qin Feiyang. Fatso suddenly looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Boss, don't you still have the emperor's handwritten edict? Will this handwritten order be of any use now?" The Kirin army commander was stunned and hurriedly looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "What edict?" Qin Feiyang took out the edict and threw it to the Kirin army commander. The Kirin army commander opened it and looked, and a trace of anger crept up his face. He understood the emperor's personality. This edict must have been written by Qin Feiyang. Lu Zheng looked at the Kirin army commander, then looked at the edict and shook his head. "This edict is meaningless." "Yes. Emperor Hong is determined to harm me. When I take out the edict, he will definitely say that I forced him to write it before killing the emperor. Moreover, I was the one who forced the emperor to write this decree," Qin Feiyang said. Lu Zheng looked at Qin Feiyang and the Kirin army commander, and said, "It seems that there is only one way to prove your innocence." "What way?" the Kirin army commander asked. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, "Is there a need to say? Naturally, we will find the emperor and let him stand up and explain everything." "Good idea." The Kirin army commander's eyes lit up. "Good idea?" Qin Feiyang sneered. The emperor had long wanted to kill him, and the current situation was probably what the emperor was looking forward to. How could he stand up and help him? The Kirin army commander said, "I know you have a prejudice against His Majesty, but His Majesty is not an unreasonable person. When he knows the truth, when he knows that you are doing all this for the good of the great Qin, he will definitely help us. Don't be naive. Can't you see the current emperor clearly? Except for himself, no one has anything to do with him." Fatso sneered. "He won't. I believe that His Majesty is not such an unreasonable person." The Kirin army commander shook his head. "You really won't give up until you hit the wall. In that case, boss, immediately send him to Yuzhou and let him die with a clear understanding," Fatso said. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang looked at the Kirin army commander and said, "You really want to go?" "Yes." The Kirin army commander nodded. "Well, I will fulfill your wish." Qin Feiyang took out the space-time gate, handed it to Wang Yishan and said, "Accompany him to Yuzhou." "Yes." Wang Yishan respectfully responded and grabbed the space-time gate. Immediately, Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sent the two of them out. Fatso snorted coldly and said, "This Kirin army commander is really hopelessly stupid. But it is undeniable that he is a selfless person like Elder Qin," Lu Zheng said with a smile. "That's true." Fatso nodded. Qin Feiyang looked at Yan Wei and said, "Have you found out the identity of the 10 fake gods that appeared later?" Hearing Qin Feiyang's question, Fatso and the others all looked at Lu Zheng. "I haven't found out." Yan Wei shook his head. "Strange. Who are they?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. To be able to dispatch 10 fake gods at once, in the entire Great Qin Empire, there was probably only. Thinking of this, he suddenly turned his head to look at Lu Zheng. Lu Zheng touched his nose and said, "Why are you looking at me? I didn't do anything." "Stop pretending." Fatso rolled his eyes at Lu Zheng and looked at Qin Feiyang with a smile. "Boss, not long ago, we saw with our own eyes that he sent a message to Second Grandpa asking for help. Is he really from the Lu family?" Qin Feiyang was stunned, and then frowned. "Then why did he call me young master?" "Well, of course it's to hide his identity. Because if you can think of it, the Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Hong can also think of it. In the entire Great Qin Empire, only my Lu family can dispatch 10 fake gods at once. Calling you young master in public is to make Emperor Hong and the others mistakenly think that they are your subordinates. This way, they will not think of my Lu family," Lu Zheng said. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. Fatso shook his head and said, "Your Lu family is so strong, Fat Lord really doesn't understand. What are you afraid of?" Lu Zheng said, "I'm also very curious, but Second Grandpa just won't say, but my big brother should know." "Your big brother?" Everyone looked at him suspiciously. "My big brother is a true demon-level genius," said Qin Wentian. Lu Zheng smiled proudly. "How monstrous is he?" Everyone was curious. "You will know how monstrous he is when you see him in the future. In short, he is the most promising person in my Lu family to step into the war god realm," Lu Zheng said mysteriously. Gasp. Everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Chapter 1388. Yan Wei came back to his senses, looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "What's your next step?" "What do you think?" Qin Feiyang asked. "I don't know. But I know that you won't give up after suffering such a big loss this time," Yan Wei said with a smile. "Of course. Wait for me for a while. I'll contact Lu Xingqian and Elder Qin first," Qin Feiyang said. "Okay." Yan Wei nodded. After saying that, the virtual image dissipated. Qin Feiyang also immediately sent a message to Elder Qin. Buzz. After a short while, Elder Qin's virtual image appeared. Behind Old Man Qin was a stretch of mountains and rivers that stretched as far as the eye could see. "How are you doing now?" Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. "Why are you still smiling at this time?" Elder Qin stared at Qin Feiyang and said, "Give me your current coordinates." "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded. After giving Elder Qin the coordinates, he sent a message to Lu Xingqian. Subsequently, Qin Feiyang left the castle and stood in the void above the mountain range, waiting quietly. Not long after, Elder Qin and Lu Xingqian arrived one after another. "I didn't expect that the two of us would make a mistake." As soon as Lu Xingqian appeared, he looked at Qin Feiyang and shook his head with a bitter smile. His words were full of self-mockery. "Yes. We were one step behind." Qin Feiyang nodded and sighed. "You're not gods. It's normal to miscalculate." Elder Qin rolled his eyes at the two of them, looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Where's the commander of the Kirin army?" "He went to find the emperor," Qin Feiyang said. "Why did he go to find the emperor?" Elder Qin raised his eyebrows. "He wants the emperor to stand up and help us," Qin Feiyang said. "Alas, the little prince has succeeded to the throne. With the protection of the emperor and the imperial advisor, even if the emperor were to return now, he would still be powerless to reverse the situation." Old Qin sighed. Lu Xingqian listened to their conversation and frowned. You guys really know where the emperor is? It has something to do with you. Old Mr. Qin looked at Lu Xingqian. Since it's a cooperation, we should be honest with each other, right? Lu Xingqian said. All right, now is not the time for internal strife. This time I fell into the hands of Emperor Hong and the Imperial Advisor. I don't know what you guys are thinking, but I'm very unhappy. Qin Feiyang said, his eyes flashing with cold light. Then what do you want? Lu Xingqian was stunned and asked curiously. However, old Qin's expression changed abruptly as he hurriedly said, Brat, don't act recklessly. It wasn't easy for us to escape. The Imperial Advisor had already stepped into the peak of the false god realm. Coupled with Emperor Hong, the current imperial capital was equivalent to a dragon's pool and tiger's den. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Don't worry, I won't act recklessly. However, I need your cooperation. Lu Xingqian said, As long as you can vent this anger, no matter what you ask me to do, I'm willing to do it. This time, the Imperial Advisor and Emperor Hong had completely angered him. Old Qin looked at the two of them and hesitated for a moment. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, As long as you don't do anything to harm the great Qin Empire, this old man has no objections. All right then, come closer. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice. The two of them looked at each other and walked in front of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang immediately muttered in a low voice. After listening to Qin Feiyang's plan, Lu Xingqian and old Qin couldn't help but frown. What's wrong? You still don't dare? Qin Feiyang asked. Lu Xingqian said in a deep voice. This is not child's play. The Imperial Advisor and Emperor Hong are both supreme existences at the peak of the false god realm. With old Qin and my strength, we can't beat them at all. Qin Feiyang said, Don't worry about that. As long as you rush over, I'll give you Chang Shui in case you need it. That's good. With Chang Shui here, we might even be able to counterattack. Lu Xingqian's eyes lit up. Counterattack? You're thinking too much. With their strength, if they want to escape, even if we have Chang Shui, we won't be able to stop them. Old Qin snorted. Lu Xingqian smiled embarrassedly and said, I'm just saying. Old Qin, why take it seriously? Old Qin looked at Qin Feiyang and nodded. All right, we'll be the bait. You're in charge of eradicating the Zhuge family. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and Chang Shui appeared. Lu Xingqian's eyes lit up with greed. Qin Feiyang handed Chang Shui to old Qin and said telepathically, Be careful of Lu Xingqian. He's been coveting Chang Shui for a long time. Also, this is the last time I'll trust you. Please don't disappoint me again. Old Qin didn't say anything. He looked deeply at Qin Feiyang and reached out to grab Chang Shui. Seeing that Chang Shui had fallen into old Qin's hands, Lu Xingqian felt very depressed. Be careful. Go. Qin Feiyang reminded them and waved his hand. Phew. Old Qin let out a long breath. He put away Chang Shui and opened a portal. He exchanged glances with Lu Xingqian, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He turned around and rushed into the portal. Qin Feiyang immediately took out his image crystal. Buzz. Yan Wei's shadow appeared. Qin Feiyang said, Go to the Imperial Preceptor's side and stay there. Lu Xingqian and old Qin will find trouble with the Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Hong. After the Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Hong leave, immediately send me a message. After that, he briefly explained the plan to Yan Wei. Okay. Yan Wei nodded, turned off the image crystal, then opened a portal and descended in front of a lake. This was Emperor Hong's residence. By the lake, the Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Hong sat opposite each other. Yan Wei said respectfully, Greetings Emperor Hong, Imperial Preceptor. The two nodded. The Imperial Preceptor asked, Has His Majesty Hao Tian's mood stabilized? I can't see it. Yan Wei shook his head. Why can't you see it? The Imperial Preceptor was suspicious. Yan Wei said, Since returning to the palace, His Majesty Hao Tian has been sitting on the dragon throne without saying a word. This lowly one's eyes are dull, and I really can't see anything. Sigh. It's really hard for him to lose his father and mother at such a young age. Emperor Hong sighed. Yes. In the face of such a blow, even an adult wouldn't be able to bear it, let alone someone so young. Forget it, Let's not talk about it. After all, as an emperor, sooner or later he will face these problems. Now let's talk about Lu Xingqian and those 10 fake gods. The identity of these people must be investigated clearly, the imperial preceptor said, his eyes filled with killing intent. Emperor Hong said, Lu Xingqian's problem, this old man has thought about it carefully. There is only one explanation for his situation. What? The imperial preceptor was surprised. Possession. Emperor Hong said word by word, his old eyes flashing. Possession? The imperial preceptor's eyes trembled. Possession, only a war god can do it. If Emperor Hong's guess is true, then in Lu Xingqian's body, wouldn't there be a war god's soul hidden? Emperor Hong said. As for those 10 fake gods, this old man can't see through them. Yan Wei asked carefully, could it be the Lu family? Lu family? The imperial preceptor's brows raised, looking at Emperor Hong and said, it seems that only the Lu family has this ability. This old man also thought about the Lu family. But if they are really from the Lu family, then when facing Qin Feiyang they shouldn't be so respectful. However, you all also heard that they addressed Qin Feiyang as young master. From this, it can be seen that their identity is Qin Feiyang's subordinates. Emperor Hong said. The imperial preceptor nodded and said, that's right, the Lu family's people are all Qin Feiyang's relatives. Calling him young master is not too likely. Yan Wei said again, then could it be people from Forgotten Continent? Forgotten Continent. Emperor Hong and the imperial preceptor looked at each other. Don't say. There really was this possibility. After all these years, Qin Feiyang had always been in Forgotten Continent. And Forgotten Continent was also a place where powerhouses were as common as clouds. Possession, 10 false gods. Emperor Hong muttered. Just who was hiding in Lu Xingqian's body? And just what were the identities of those 10 false gods? Suddenly, Emperor Hong looked at the imperial preceptor and said, Imperial preceptor, why don't you go to Forgotten Continent to investigate this? The moment the imperial preceptor heard this, a trace of dread crawled up in his eyes. That snow python's methods were still vivid in his mind even now. Boom! Right at this moment. At a certain time in the imperial palace, an earth-shaking loud explosion sounded out. And the imperial preceptor and Emperor Hong were startled, hurriedly rushing up to the sky, looking towards the sky above the imperial palace. What happened? Yan Wei's gaze flashed, also hurriedly following up, a look of bewilderment on his face. Emperor Hong said in a deep voice, the sound seems to be Jilai little prince's bedroom. Quickly go take a look. The imperial preceptor's expression changed, and he immediately opened the teleportation gate, following which the 3 people rushed in like lightning. Almost in the next instant, they descended above the little prince's bedroom. And at this moment, what bedroom was there? It was a ruin, dust billowing. 2 lords quickly look, it's old man Qin and Lu Xingqian. Yan Wei suddenly pointed to the distant void and roared. Emperor Hong and the imperial preceptor suddenly raised their heads to look, and immediately saw old man Qin and Lu Xingqian grabbing the little prince, fleeing out of the city. Still dare to come back and cause trouble, simply don't know life from death. The 2 people's hair fluttered in anger, a monstrous killing intent erupted from their bodies, unleashing their speed, chasing after old man Qin and Lu Xingqian. What? They actually kidnapped His Majesty the White Sky? The 2 of them really aren't afraid of death. It must be Qin Feiyang, that bastard who ordered it. Looks like Emperor Hong was right. This bastard has always been thinking about the throne. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let old man Qin and Lu Xingqian come and kidnap His Majesty the White Sky. I don't know what this old man Qin is thinking. In the past, he was highly respected and revered by the world. But now he actually ruined his reputation for a deranged bastard. The people in the major cities below raised their heads to look at old man Qin and Lu Xingqian, their eyes filled with disgust. There were also people discussing in the imperial palace. When Yan Wei heard these words, he felt very uncomfortable in his heart. Wasn't Qin Feiyang doing this to protect Great Qin's rivers and mountains and its people? But these people actually scolded Qin Feiyang like this. It was really too much. But he ignored it, found a place where there was no one, and sent a message to Qin Feiyang. Buzz. Qin Feiyang's image appeared. Yanwei said. The imperial preceptor and Emperor Hong have been lured away. Very good. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. Yanwei said again. Oh right, if there's a chance you can go and meet Marquis Xiao, because according to my observation, this person is a reasonable person, perhaps he will be useful to us in the future. Marquis Xiao. Qin Feiyang murmured and nodded. All right. Of course he knew this person, but they didn't have much interaction before. With that, Qin Feiyang turned off the image crystal, killing intent surging out of his eyes, and shouted, Everyone prepare for battle. Inside the ancient castle. Chapter 1389. Zhuge Mansion. Because of the Imperial Grandmaster's secret care, coupled with Zhuge Mingyang's monstrous talent, the current Zhuge family could be said to be like the sun in the sky. Among the 100 great marquis, Zhuge Wuhou was already firmly seated on the throne of number 1. At this moment, Zhuge family's meeting hall, Zhuge Wuhou, Zhuge Nangong, and Zhuge Nanhua sat upright at the table. Below, a guard commander stood respectfully and reported to the three of them about Elder Qin and Lu Xingqian kidnapping the little prince. After listening, Zhuge Wuhou's face was terrifyingly gloomy. Zhuge Nanhua looked at Zhuge Wuhou and waved to the guard commander. You can leave first. If there's any news, inform us immediately. Yes. The guard commander respectfully replied, then turned around and left in large strides. Zhuge Nanhua waved his hand again, and the door closed with a bang. He then looked at Zhuge Wuhou and comforted him. Xiao Xian, you don't have to worry. With the ancestor and Emperor Hong here, Elder Qin and Lu Xingqian wouldn't dare to harm Haotian. Elder Qin and Lu Xingqian wouldn't dare, but what about Qin Feiyang? These two people came to kidnap Haotian. It must be Qin Feiyang who planned this behind the scenes. Don't you understand Qin Feiyang? In this world, there is nothing he doesn't dare to do. Although Haotian is only a puppet in the hands of Ancestor Yin, he is still my flesh and blood, a descendant of my Zhuge family. Zhuge Wuhou said in grief and indignation. Hearing the latter half of his words, Zhuge Nanhua's expression changed, and he hurriedly made a shushing gesture and said, Be careful of the walls having ears. Zhuge Nangong also looked around vigilantly, looked at Zhuge Wuhou and said in a low voice, In the future, you are not allowed to say such things again. What are you afraid of? Although the great Qin is still surnamed Qin, the control is already in the hands of my Zhuge family. So what if someone hears it? Zhuge Wuhou coldly snorted. Shut up. Zhuge Nanhua shouted coldly. You can be arrogant, but don't forget your limits. The Great Qin Empire is not as simple as you think. That's right. Let's not talk about the fake gods in the back mountain of the Imperial Palace. Let's focus on the Lu family. Even though the old ancestor has something on the Lu clan, if the Lu clan finds out that the little prince is a descendant of our Zhuge clan, they will definitely not let this matter rest. The Lu family's strength is unfathomable. Even now we still don't know how strong they are. If we really provoke them, it won't do us any good. Zhuge Nangong said with a solemn expression on his face. Hearing their words, Zhuge Wuhou quivered and finally calmed down. So you all thought that the little prince was a descendant of the Zhuge family. But at this moment, a cold voice suddenly resounded in the hall. Who? Zhuge Wuhou and the other two turned pale with fright. There was actually someone hiding here. Wait a minute. This voice, it seemed to be Qin Feiyang. Damn it. How could it be him? Why is he here? The next moment, Qin Feiyang appeared in the air. The moment they saw Qin Feiyang appear, a trace of fear involuntarily crawled onto their faces. How did you get in? What did you mean by that sentence just now? Zhuge Wuhou said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. I have the invisibility technique and 2 spatial divine objects. If I want to enter your Zhuge family, wouldn't it be easy? As for that sentence. At this point, Qin Feiyang laughed in ridicule and asked, Could it be that you have never doubted the identity of the little prince? Is there a problem with his identity? Zhuge Wuhou said in a deep voice. It seems that I have to make it clearer. I already know about you and that woman. I also know that the first prince is the illegitimate son of the two of you. And it is precisely because of your relationship with that woman that you have taken it for granted that the little prince is also your son all these years. But that's not the case, Qin Feiyang said. This. Zhuge Wuhou was stunned. In the past, I was the same as you. I thought that the little prince should be the same as the first prince, the illegitimate son of you and that woman. I even wanted to kill him. But to be on the safe side, I verified his identity. While the emperor and the little prince were not paying attention, I took their blood and put it in the water. Guess what the result was? Qin Feiyang said playfully. Don't keep me in suspense, hurry up and say it. Zhuge Wuhou growled. Is there a need to say that? The little prince has nothing to do with you at all. He is the son of the emperor and the empress. It is also because of this that I did not kill him, and even helped him ascend to the throne. Qin Feiyang laughed. How could this be? Zhuge Wuhou muttered, his face filled with disbelief. Zhuge Nanhua anxiously said. Xiaoxian, he is trying to sow discord, don't be fooled by him. Zhuge Wuhou's real name was Zhuge Xiaoxian. Qin Feiyang laughed faintly. At this time, do I still need to lie to you? Impossible. That woman clearly told me that the little prince is my own flesh and blood. Zhuge Wuhou shook his head crazily, as if he was about to collapse. Qin Feiyang was slightly startled. The little prince was born of that woman, so she should know whose child he was. But why did she lie to Zhuge Wuhou? Thinking about it carefully, Qin Feiyang revealed a look of realization. Then, Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at Zhuge Wuhou and laughed. That woman is very smart. She knows that once you find out that the little prince is not your son, you and the imperial tutor will definitely think of ways to kill the little prince. After all, she is a mother and loves her son dearly. But this is only secondary. She is even more afraid of angering you. Because she understands the imperial tutor's personality and methods, so in order to protect herself, she lied that the little prince is your son. Of course. We can't rule out another possibility. She has her own ambitions, and doesn't want to be controlled and manipulated by you. Qin Feiyang laughed. Damned woman. Zhuge Wuhou clenched his fists tightly, his old eyes bloodshot. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. She indeed deserves to die, otherwise I wouldn't have killed her. Xiaoxian, calm down, don't be fooled. Whether or not the little prince is your flesh and blood, we will know after Ancestor Yin rescues him. Zhuge Nanhua thought. He had always thought that Qin Feiyang was trying to sow discord. That's right. I haven't even personally verified it. Why would I be angry? Zhuge Wuhou suddenly came to a realization, looked at Qin Feiyang, and said in a deep voice. Did you come to my Zhuge family just to tell us this? Of course not. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Then why? Zhuge Wuhou raised his eyebrows. Is there a need to ask? Qin Feiyang looked at Zhuge Wuhou strangely and laughed. The little prince has just ascended to the throne, and I came to your Zhuge family. Do you think it would be a good thing? Hearing this, the three of them trembled. All right, I'll tell you guys clearly. The reason why I asked Old Man Qin and Lu Xingqian to kidnap the little prince was purely to lure the imperial tutor and Emperor Hong away. Because if they are in the imperial city, they will hinder me from eradicating your Zhuge family. Qin Feiyang laughed. Boom. Hearing this, Zhuge Wuhou and the other two immediately blasted open the roof with surging emperor's might and rushed out like lightning. Qin Feiyang has come to invade. Elders, please come out and kill the enemy. In the next moment, Zhuge Wuhou's voice sounded in the sky above the Zhuge mansion. What? Qin Feiyang is here. This demon is vicious and merciless. He kills without batting an eye. Everyone run. The Zhuge family was instantly in chaos. Boom. At the same time, a terrifying aura erupted from the ground in the center of the mansion. Following closely, 10 figures rushed out from the ground. There were men and women among the 10, and they all looked rather old. The aura they emitted was that of a 9-star war emperor. Where is Qin Feiyang? The 10 of them flew to the side of Zhuge Wuhou and the other two, and asked with a murderous aura. He's in the main hall. Zhuge Wuhou pointed to the broken meeting hall below. One of them said in a deep voice, We'll go and pin him down. You inform Ancestor Yin immediately. All right. Zhuge Wuhou nodded. It's too late. Qin Feiyang's calm voice sounded from the main hall. Boom. Before he could finish, waves of shocking emperor's might and ferocious beasts rushed out from the main hall. The broken meeting hall was instantly reduced to ashes. Zhuge Wuhou and the others immediately saw that in the dust, there were 3 ferocious beasts and a group of 9 Star War Emperor. That's right. They were Lei Bao, Seal, Seahorse, Wang Yangfeng and the others. Qin Feiyang raised his head and glanced at Zhuge Wuhou and the others, and said word by word. I want the entire Zhuge family to die, not a single blade of grass to grow, not an inch of land to be left. Kill. Lei Bao and the other 2, Wang Yangfeng and the others, let out a long roar in unison. Swoosh. Lei Bao took the lead. The power of thunder all over his body was like a raging wave, rolling and roaring. One of the old women roared. Everyone, don't be afraid. They are only 9 Star War Emperor. But before she could finish speaking, Lei Bao laughed and waved his thick claws. The power of thunder covered the sky and covered the earth. The old woman screamed and died on the spot. What? So strong? Zhuge Wuhou and the others' expressions changed. Boom. At this moment, the seahorse, the leopard, Wang Yangfeng, and the others unleashed their auras too. This, Zhuge Wuhou and the others were instantly petrified. The aura that these people and ferocious beasts released was actually all at the peak of the 9 Star War Emperor realm. How is this possible? The last time they came, they were only ordinary 9 Star War Emperor and 9 Star Emperor Beast? The group of people were filled with disbelief. How long had it been, and they had all stepped into the peak realm? Even if they had opened all the doors of potential, it was impossible to do so. Just as the group of people were distracted, another old man died tragically under Lei Bao's claws. Seahorse, Seal, Wang Yangfeng and the others had already arrived in front of Zhuge Wuhou and the others. Quickly inform Ancestor Yun. Zhuge Wuhou suddenly came back to his senses and roared. At the same time, without hesitation, he activated his battle soul and evolved his divine art. A mighty divine power surged out. Zhuge Nanhua and the others were the same. In short, at this moment, they did not dare to hold back. Battle soul. Divine art. Chapter 1390. Shua. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the white-eyed wolf appeared. I haven't come out to play for so long. I wonder if anyone still remembers me now? The white-eyed wolf scanned its surroundings, its eyes filled with hope. This closed-door training was the longest in its life. However, it was very satisfied with the results of its closed-door training. 3 Star War Emperor. He was only one step away from catching up to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at it, and said, Stop acting cool, quickly deprive them of their battle souls, and give them a show of strength. You're looking down on me, right? What show of strength? To think that you can say that. At the very least, I was once an invincibly handsome wolf whose name spread all over the world. Making them afraid, making them despair, is my style, understand? The white-eyed wolf said with dissatisfaction. I think it's notorious. Qin Feiyang was speechless. Iske. A boring person like you will never understand my charm. The white-eyed wolf glanced at Qin Feiyang with disdain. Its entire body emitted a dazzling golden light, and a terrifying aura spread out from its body. Charm? Qin Feiyang's face twitched. He really couldn't tell what kind of charm this ruffian wolf had. What aura? At the same time, sensing the Wolf King's aura, Zhuge Wuhou and the others' faces were filled with bewilderment. This aura was actually not very strong, but it gave them a great sense of danger. Come out! The white-eyed wolf roared, and a bright golden light soared into the sky. The next step was smooth. Between heaven and earth, a huge beast's shadow appeared. However, they were unable to see its true appearance clearly. They could only see a blurry outline and could not tell what kind of beast it was. At this moment, not only Zhuge Wuhou and the others, but the entire Zhuge family, and even the entire inner city, couldn't help but feel a sense of fear. That enormous beast's shadow was like an ancient giant beast that had descended into the world. It was indomitable and intimidating in all directions. You pieces of trash dare to activate your fighting soul in front of me. You don't know your place. Take it away. The white-eyed wolf looked at Zhuge Wuhou and the others, his eyes filled with contempt. As it roared, the golden beast suddenly opened its mouth, and a gust of wind blew. The battle souls of Zhuge Wuhou and the others immediately flew towards the golden beast figure uncontrollably. What happened? Everyone's expression changed. Zhuge Wuhou suddenly thought of something and roared. Not good. Everyone quickly put away your battle souls. Back then, Mingyang told me that this ruffian wolf's innate ability can devour and take away the battle souls of living beings. When Zhuge Nanhua and the rest heard this, their faces turned pale, and they immediately withdrew their fighting souls. However, they were shocked to discover that they had lost contact with their fighting souls. Finally, they watched helplessly as their battle souls were swallowed by the golden beast's shadow in one gulp. Damn it! The group of people immediately checked the fighting soul, and were shocked to find that the fighting soul in the Qi Si had really disappeared. In an instant, they fell into deep panic and despair. Amazing! Awesome! Wang Yangfeng and the rest, Lei Bao and the other two beasts, were dumbfounded. After being together for so long, they had naturally heard of the white-eyed wolf's fighting soul. However, this was the first time they had seen it with their own eyes. It could actually take away the fighting soul. Oh my god! This was too heaven-defying. What kind of monster was it? In the future, who would dare to activate their fighting soul in front of it? Hey! The white-eyed wolf smiled proudly and the golden beast shadow instantly disappeared. Qin Feiyang did not say anything and directly waved his hand, sending the white-eyed wolf to the ancient castle. Otherwise, with this guy's character, he would definitely continue to show off in front of him. Without your fighting soul, how are you going to fight with us? Wang Yangfeng, bring some people to kill the Zhuge family. Leave this place to us three brothers. Lei Bao shouted. The so-called three brothers were naturally Lei Bao, Haima and Seal. All right. Wang Yangfeng and the rest did not hesitate and immediately scattered in all directions. Like killing gods, wherever they passed, blood dyed the ground. The battle between Lei Bao and the other two beasts and Zhuge Wuhou, and the rest also began once again. Qin Feiyang rose into the air and stood above a large hall, coldly sweeping his gaze over everything. Screams, cries for help, curses at this moment filled every corner of the Zhuge family. One corpse after another fell down continuously. Blood was like a column, gathering into a small stream, emitting a pungent smell of blood. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked in the direction of the temple. A murderous intent flashed in his eyes. He was not worried about the imperial preceptor and Emperor Hong at all, because Elder Qin and Lu Xingqian would think of ways to delay them. Even if someone sent them a message, they would not be able to rush back to rescue them. As for the false god in the back mountain of the imperial palace, if nothing unexpected happened, he must have entered a state of self-sealing again. Otherwise, he would have appeared by now. So, in his heart, an even bolder idea emerged. Eliminate the law enforcement hall, as well as the disciples of the Zhuge family in the temple. These people were all the imperial preceptor's minions. As long as they were all eliminated, the imperial preceptor would be alone. Of course, the imperial preceptor also controlled the invincible Black Army. However, the people of the invincible Black Army were all small fries and were not worth worrying about. At this point, shockingly, a bloody kill character appeared between Qin Feiyang's eyebrows. His whole person instantly seemed to have transformed into a killing god. That terrifying, monstrous, murderous aura was like a tide, toppling mountains and overturning seas. It instantly enveloped the Zhuge family. Immediately after, a hair-raising scene appeared. Whether it was the blood on the ground, the blood in the corpses, or the blood that flowed out from the wounds, they all rose into the air and gathered into waves of blood, surging towards Qin Feiyang. What's going on? The people of the Zhuge family who were fleeing, seeing this scene, all changed their expressions. In the end, they saw that the waves of blood actually all rushed into the space between Qin Feiyang's eyebrows. What is he doing? He's actually absorbing human blood. Is he really a demon? People panicked and fled in all directions in a panic. But facing the pursuit of Wang Yangfeng and the others, could they escape? A group of ordinary 9-star War Emperor was enough to easily kill them. Not to mention a group of 9-star War Emperor Peak Realm super experts. As more and more people died, The murderous aura emitted from Qin Feiyang's body became more and more terrifying. His eyes, long hair, and even his skin seemed to be dyed with blood. And his cultivation had already risen from a 4-star war emperor to a 9-star war emperor. Qin Feiyang, you deserve to die. Zhuge Wuhou roared angrily, his eyes bloodshot. It's you who deserves to die. Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at Zhuge Wuhou, his eyes filled with ruthless coldness. Swish. He took a step forward and rushed into the sky, his killing intent surging. Boom. Without saying a word, he raised his arm and slapped Zhuge Wuhou's head. Although Zhuge Wuhou's strength was not bad, under the attacks of the thunder leopard and the other 2 beasts, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. How could he withstand Qin Feiyang's palm strike? There was no suspense. With a kacha sound, Zhuge Wuhou's head exploded, and his flesh and blood flew everywhere. The blood that flowed out was all absorbed by the word kill. Father! A sorrowful roar resounded through the sky and earth. Qin Feiyang looked towards the source of the voice, and saw a group of young men with extraordinary temperaments flying over from afar like lightning. On their clothes, there was the symbol of the war god temple. And the person who was roaring in grief was none other than Zhuge Mingyang. I was just about to look for you, but I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to me. Qin Feiyang muttered, his eyes flashing with killing intent. Bastard! Just as Qin Feiyang was about to attack Zhuge Mingyang, Zhuge Nanhua and Zhuge Nangong suddenly roared and attacked Qin Feiyang with their divine art, Eclipse Moon. Zhuge Wuhou's death had made them completely crazy. An ant dares to compete with the sun and moon? Qin Feiyang displayed his contempt to the extreme. With a wave of his hand, he activated the 4 moves of the void returning art. Wisps of invisible force burst out from the ground like a tide. The void returning art had already transformed into a divine art, and its power was countless times stronger than before. When the 4 moves were used together, it could destroy heaven and earth. Although Zhuge Nanhua and Zhuge Nangong were super experts at the peak of the 9-star combat emperor realm, they were already seriously injured. With a loud bang, the 2's divine arts were instantly destroyed. The invisible energy carried monstrous divine power, and mercilessly pounced on them. Accompanied by 2 shrill screams, the 2 of them splashed their blood in the sky. Their blood was also absorbed by the word kill. Great-grandfather. Seeing Zhuge Nanhua and Zhuge Nangong die in front of him, Zhuge Mingyang roared in grief and his face was filled with hatred. A purple-clothed young man next to him stared at Qin Feiyang and suddenly said, Qin Feiyang's current power is too terrifying, let's go. I'm not leaving. I want to avenge my father and great-grandfather. Zhuge Mingyang roared. The purple-clothed young man raised his eyebrows and directly knocked Zhuge Mingyang unconscious. Then he carried Zhuge Mingyang and turned around. With a mysterious step, he left without looking back. When the rest of the people saw this, they immediately followed the purple-clothed young man and escaped. Qin Feiyang looked at the purple-clothed young man in surprise. Previously, his attention was all on Zhuge Mingyang, and he did not pay attention to the others. At this moment, after careful observation, he realized that the purple-clothed young man's aura had already reached the peak of the 9-star combat emperor realm. Could this person be the number 1 on the billboard, Zhuge Xingfeng? He had heard from Lu Xingqian that Zhuge Xingfeng was very talented and occupied the number 1 spot on the billboard of the War God Temple. Moreover, he was the number 1 in the War God Temple. However, he had never seen Zhuge Xingfeng before, so he was not sure. Other than the purple-clothed young man, there were 6 people whose cultivation had reached the 9-star combat emperor realm. The rest of them were basically between 2-star and 8-star combat emperor realm. Not bad. A mere martial marquis government actually has such a demon, but today they will all die. Qin Feiyang lifted the corner of his mouth, and there was a bone-piercing cold light in his eyes. Swoosh. He used the phantom steps and stepped into the air step by step. It seemed very slow, but every step he took covered a distance of more than 10 miles. Brother Feng, he's coming. A black-clothed young man turned around and his expression changed. Other than the purple-clothed young man, the rest of them were also terrified. The purple-clothed young man said in a deep voice, "Don't panic, I'm faster than him, he can't catch up with us." After saying that, He waved his hand and swept everyone up and flew towards the imperial palace at lightning speed. As a disciple of the war god temple and a disciple of the Zhuge family, he naturally had perfect auxiliary combat skills. As for Qin Feiyang's cultivation, although it had already reached the 9-star combat emperor realm, it had not reached the peak, so his speed naturally could not catch up with the purple-clothed young man. Even so, the black-clothed young man and the rest could not help but be afraid. Therefore, before the purple-clothed young man finished speaking, someone immediately said, "Even if he can't catch up with us, where can we escape to? Sooner or later, we will still fall into his hands. What's the hurry? Before coming, I have already sent a message to Ancestor Yin. He will definitely come back to save us. Now let's go to the back mountain of the Imperial Palace. There is a false god guarding the back mountain. I don't believe that he will dare to chase us in. As long as Ancestor Yin and Emperor Hong return, it will be his doomsday." Chapter 1391. Back Mountain of the Imperial Palace. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. The purple-robed youth and the others did not use voice transmission, so he heard every word. There was indeed a pseudo-god guarding the back mountain. However, these self-sealed pseudo-gods needed a large amount of blood to be awakened. Before they were awakened, they were like Zhuge Shenfeng, not a threat at all. Even if there was a battle beside them, they would not know. So, there was nothing to worry about. Qin Feiyang walked step by step in the void, his blood-red hair fluttering and his murderous aura soaring to the sky. He was a living god of death. Everywhere he went, there were cries of pain. Those who were shrouded by the murderous aura had their blood spurting out uncontrollably from their pores. This was the power of the kill formula when used to the extreme. Even if there were no wounds on their bodies, Qin Feiyang could still snatch the blood in their bodies. However, Qin Feiyang did not kill these people, only snatching half of their blood. Finally, the purple-robed youth and the others entered the sky above the back mountain. Boom. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's cultivation suddenly soared to the peak of the 9-star combat emperor realm. However, it was still Qin Feiyang's main body that was controlling the corporeal body, because the increase from a 4-star combat emperor to a 9-star combat emperor was only 5 small realms. It was still within his range of tolerance, so there was no need for the inner demons to appear. What? Sensing the terrifying aura, the purple-robed youth and the others' faces changed. What was going on with this person's cultivation? From a 4-star combat emperor to a peak 9-star combat emperor. How did he do such a heaven-defying thing? A red-robed girl stammered. "Brother Feng, he won't raise his cultivation to the pseudo-god realm later, right?" Hearing the red-robed girl's words, the group of people's hearts sank. The purple-robed youth's mood instantly became incomparably heavy. At this rate, it might really be possible. But they did not know that they were completely scaring themselves. Once, Qin Feiyang had specially tried. Although the kill formula was heaven-defying, it could not superimpose his cultivation to the pseudo-god realm. Whoosh! Qin Feiyang also entered the back mountain of the Imperial Palace openly. None of the Kirin army, who were guarding the back of the mountain, dared to block the way. They all retreated to the side in fear. A young man in black turned his head and glanced at Qin Feiyang. His pupils suddenly shrank, and he said in surprise, "Brother Feng, didn't you say that he didn't dare to come in? Faster. This is already my maximum speed. How can I be faster?" The purple-clad young man glared angrily at the black-clad young man and said, "Don't panic. Although his cultivation level has reached the peak, his speed is only on par with mine. He's dreaming if he wants to catch up with us." Hearing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Just as the purple-clothed young man spoke, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and he instantly disappeared. Where is he? After listening to the purple-clothed young man, the black-clothed young man turned around to look at Qin Feiyang. But when he saw that there was no one behind him, his face was full of surprise. The purple-clothed young man and the others also turned their heads, their eyes full of surprise. Could it be that he knows that he can't catch up with us, so he took the initiative to leave? The group of people involuntarily stopped and turned around to look at the void and the earth in front of them. "Let's go." All of a sudden, the woman in red seemed to have thought of something and shouted at the purple-clothed young man. The purple-clothed young man was stunned and seemed to have thought of something. He hurriedly led the group of people and fled into the back of the mountain. What's going on? Someone looked at the woman in red and asked in confusion. Qin Feiyang must have gone to the castle. He wants to use the castle to make us relax our vigilance and think that he has left. In fact, he is secretly driving the castle to chase us. The woman in red lowered her voice and said in a low voice. Is that so? Everyone looked at each other. The purple-clothed young man said gloomily. It must be so. This man is cunning. If we are not careful, we will fall into his trap. You are quite smart. Before the purple-clothed young man's voice died away, a playful laughter suddenly sounded in the void in front of the group of people. The next moment, Qin Feiyang appeared out of thin air in front of the group of people. That's right. He entered the castle to mislead these people into thinking that he had left. He had tried this method before, and every time, it was a tried and tested success. Damn it! The purple-clothed young man cursed in his heart. Without another word, he hurriedly led the group of people and fled in the direction of the entrance. Running away without fighting? Are you worthy of being the prodigies of the war god temple? Qin Feiyang had a mocking look in his eyes as he followed behind the group of people unhurriedly. The group of people remained silent, but their hands were unconsciously clenched tightly. Their eyes were also shining with a shocking cold light. Qin Feiyang's words hit their weak spot. As the prodigies of the war god temple, running away was a naked humiliation. However, facing Qin Feiyang at this moment, they really did not have the slightest bit of courage to fight. This was because Qin Feiyang's current murderous aura was too terrifying. It had already made them lose the will to fight. In short, before the battle even started, they were already scared out of their wits. Looks like I have to force you guys to fight. Qin Feiyang chuckled and raised his hand in the air. Boom. An invisible force surged out and pounced on the group of people in an overwhelming manner. The first move of the ruins of En technique, landslide. The divine aura surged, and the mountains and rivers below instantly collapsed. Countless ferocious beasts fled in fear. The purple-clothed young man's eyes flashed with murderous intent. He shouted, "For the sake of the Zhuge family's reputation, I'll stay and fight with him. You guys go." Brother Feng, don't be rash. The red-clothed woman was shocked and hurriedly advised. He's too close to us now. We have no choice. Someone has to stand out and fight him head-on. Don't worry. I'm the strongest person of the War God Temple. It won't be that easy for him to kill me. With that, the purple-clothed young man threw Zhuge Mingyang in front of the red-clothed woman and turned to face Qin Feiyang. Let's go. The woman in red shouted in a low voice. Then, she carried the unconscious Zhuge Mingyang and fled towards the entrance without looking back. The other 9-star combat emperors also took the others and fled madly. Come on. Let me see how strong you, Qin Feiyang, are. Boom. The purple-clothed young man's body shook and a monstrous emperor's aura erupted. He then waved his hands and a crescent moon appeared in the sky and collided with the invisible force. The collision of the two divine arts instantly caused a deafening explosion. A destructive shockwave spread wildly in all directions with the two of them as the center. Roar. Crack. Rumble. The mountains and rivers shattered and the ferocious beasts howled. In the blink of an eye, everything within a few hundred miles was razed to the ground. Although the red-clothed woman and the others had escaped in time, they were still blown away by the airwave. Their bodies were badly mutilated. If it weren't for the protection of the 9-star combat emperors, the 2-star and 8-star combat emperors would have died on the spot. Qin Feiyang glanced at the red-clothed woman and the others and ignored them. He looked at the purple-clothed young man and said with a smile, "The number 1 person of the War God Temple. You are indeed Zhuge Xingfeng. I never would have thought that the famous Qin Feiyang would know of me. Zhuge Xingfeng. Should I feel honored?" Zhuge Xingfeng said. "Not honored. You should feel lucky. If you had overestimated yourself like Zhuge Jinghong, you would have been a corpse by now." Qin Feiyang said lightly. "Zhuge Jinghong was killed by you." Killing intent surged in Zhuge Xingfeng's eyes. "How dare you insult my mother? I, Qin Feiyang, will not let go of your ancestor, Zhuge Xinyun, let alone Zhuge Jinghong." Qin Feiyang took a step forward. A terrifying aura shook the void as he threw out a punch. Arrogant! Zhuge Xingfeng shouted. His battle chi surged as he threw out a palm strike. Boom! The moment the fist and palm collided, Zhuge Xingfeng's arm was torn open. He was sent flying with blood spurting out. This strength. How is this possible? His eyes were blank. They were both at the peak of the 9-star combat emperor realm. Why was Qin Feiyang so much stronger than him? You don't know about this, do you? Once upon a time, I killed a divine beast and ate its flesh. Therefore, my physique has been greatly improved. Now both my strength and the strength of my physique are far superior to those of the same cultivation level. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and threw out another punch. Killed a divine beast. Zhuge Xingfeng murmured. His face was filled with disbelief. He even forgot to counterattack. Boom. Qin Feiyang's punch landed on Zhuge Xingfeng's chest. Crack. His ribs broke on the spot, and his chest caved in. Zhuge Xingfeng let out a painful cry as he crashed into the ground like a meteorite. Boom. A deep crater with a diameter of several kilometers immediately appeared. He actually killed a divine beast. How did he do it? Zhuge Xingfeng lay at the bottom of the deep pit, his eyes filled with disbelief. Suddenly, he slammed his palm on the ground and shot up into the sky like a cannonball. His body was covered in blood and his long hair danced in the wind. At this moment, he was like an awakened beast, giving off a great sense of crisis. So what if he killed a divine beast? I, Zhuge Xingfeng, defeated countless geniuses of the War God Temple and reached the top of the wind cloud list. My reputation is not undeserved. Beast transformation, blood dragon. As Zhuge Xingfeng roared, his whole body began to change. His body swelled crazily and his clothes were torn into pieces. Finally, they flew all over the sky. At the same time, a fierce aura rushed out from his body. Qin Feiyang was surprised. As his body swelled bigger and bigger, Zhuge Xingfeng could not help but howl as if he was suffering unparalleled pain. Suddenly, a dazzling blood-red light appeared on his body. As soon as the blood-red light appeared, his skin began to change. Dragon scales the size of a palm started to appear all over his body. The dragon scales appeared as if they were dyed in blood, and they were completely blood-red. Finally, his whole body was covered in dragon scales. Moreover, his limbs and head were also changing. His limbs turned into dragon claws and his head into a dragon's head. The nails on his limbs grew to 1/2 meter long, and were like sharp blades with a bone-piercing sharpness. At this time, Zhuge Xingfeng's body was more than 10 meters tall. The dragon scales all over his body were shining with blood-red light. He had turned into a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus. And there was no trace of human emotion on his body. There was only killing, hostility, and blood. Qin Feiyang, today is the day you die. Chapter 1392. Death. Qin Feiyang murmured. He raised his arm and punched. The terrifying power poured out, twisting the void. Boom. But in the end, he was no match for Zhuge Xingfeng. He was slapped down by Zhuge Xingfeng's claw and smashed into the mountains below. His arm was also lacerated. Blood and flesh flew everywhere. This Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. Ever since he ate the divine meat of the Lion King, he had never lost to anyone in the same realm in terms of physical strength. This was the first time. Eating the meat of a divine beast is just so. Zhuge Xingfeng stood in the sky and laughed. Then he rushed toward Qin Feiyang with a monstrous aura. Beast transformation, blood dragon. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. Whoosh! The next moment, he slammed his palm on the ground and rushed up in an instant. Flaming battle chi appeared and gathered in his palm. You don't know what death is. Zhuge Xingfeng's face was full of contempt. The dragon claw whistled. Qin Feiyang spat out a mouthful of blood and smashed into the ground again. Dust flew everywhere. Furthermore, those sharp claws left a shocking wound on his body that was so deep that his bones could be seen. The purple-gold dragon blood gushed out like a small stream. However, to Qin Feiyang, these injuries were nothing at all. He stared at Zhuge Xingfeng with a trace of horror in his eyes. This was a divine art. Moreover, this beast form gave Zhuge Xingfeng a very strong defense and attack power. Qin Feiyang, is this all you've got? Be destroyed. Zhuge Xingfeng laughed wildly. The blood and qi in his body surged and turned into a blood-red wave. It carried the power to destroy the world and blasted toward Qin Feiyang. I was just testing the power of your divine art. Why are you so arrogant? Qin Feiyang suddenly stood up and smiled disdainfully. The life force contained in the fire of life and the purple gold dragon blood was quickly healing his wounds. Boom. He raised his hand and waved it. A golden light surged out like a torrent and collided with the wave of blood. Immediately, the blood qi spun in the air and instantly engulfed Zhuge Xingfeng. Return formula. Give him a taste of his own medicine. Ah! Zhuge Xingfeng struggled and roared in the blood waves. His entire body was drenched in blood. The dragon scales were completely shattered. Qin Feiyang sneered. How does it feel to be injured by your own moves? Don't celebrate too early. Zhuge Xingfeng roared. Following closely, a mighty divine aura rushed out from the blood waves. The blood wave instantly collapsed. Zhuge Xingfeng appeared in front of Qin Feiyang. Although he was covered in wounds, the murderous aura he exuded was no less than before. The first style of the blood dragon art, torrential blood waves. He waved his dragon claw, and a wave of blood that was even more terrifying than before appeared. It was like a sea of blood, rolling and surging above his head. The sky, earth, and void of the mountain behind the imperial palace were all dyed red at this moment. No deity art can threaten me. Qin Feiyang stood proudly in the air, showing his domineering aura. Is that so? If you continue to be so confident, I can guarantee that you will regret it in the end. Zhuge Xingfeng smiled ferociously. He raised his dragon claw high and pressed it down. The blood waves above his head poured down in torrents, crazily pouncing towards Qin Feiyang. The terrifying aura shrouded all directions. The earth suddenly trembled violently, and cracks spread out. However, Qin Feiyang was indifferent. When the wave of blood came, he raised his arm and met it with a palm. Golden light surged in his palm. As long as he had the return formula, no matter what divine art the opponent used, it would become his trump card. Boom. There was no suspense. The wave of blood turned in the air and drowned Zhuge Xingfeng again. For a moment, Zhuge Xingfeng's shrill scream, his unwilling roar, resounded through the sky. Why? Why did God give him such a divine art? I don't accept it. The second move of the blood dragon formula, rolling blood thunder. The wave of blood rolled crazily. Streaks of blood-red lightning swept out from the wave of blood, carrying a destructive aura, and continuously bombarded Qin Feiyang. It's useless. Qin Feiyang shook his head and suddenly stretched out his hand. Waves of golden light roared out. All the blood-red lightning was reflected back and entered Zhuge Xingfeng's body. In just a moment, Zhuge Xingfeng's beast body was full of holes and blood flowed out. Why is this happening? I am the number one of the War God Temple. How can I be defeated by him? The third move, Blood Dragon. Zhuge Xingfeng had completely lost his mind. The blood qi in Xiao Chen's body and the battle qi in his qi sea poured out without reservation, turning into a huge blood dragon that was several kilometers long. The blood dragon bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it charged at Qin Feiyang. I told you it's useless. Why don't you believe me? Qin Feiyang shook his head. Roar. Accompanied by a dragon's roar. The divine dragon seal appeared in the sky and instantly grew to thousands of feet in size to meet the blood dragon. Boom. A loud explosion rang out, shocking the entire imperial city. The blood dragon, without any resistance, was directly crushed by the divine dragon seal. Zhuge Xingfeng was so angry that he spat out blood. This was the difference between the divine arts. Although they were both deity skills, a lower-level deity skill would be able to destroy a higher-level deity skill. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. What else do you have? Show me all of them. I'll let you die knowing why. From the beginning to the end, he was like a mountain, standing steadily in the void, without moving half a step. Roar. Ah! Zhuge Xingfeng roared and roared as if he had gone mad. He was already covered in wounds, but Qin Feiyang did not move at all. For him, this was not only a humiliation, but also a torture. You will regret it. You will. The fourth move, Blood Dragon True Form. As he roared, his beast body swelled again, and the murderous aura around him became even more terrifying. Finally, Zhuge Xingfeng had completely turned into a real blood dragon. His body was hundreds of feet long, covered in dense scales, and his murderous aura was monstrous. Roar! He raised his huge head and let out a deafening dragon roar. He opened his bloody mouth and pounced on Qin Feiyang. Interesting, Qin Feiyang murmured. It was his first time seeing a divine art that could turn a living person into a blood dragon. He raised his big hand and waved gently. The purple gold dragon chi surged, and the divine dragon seal appeared again. With monstrous dragon power, it cut through the sky and collided with the blood dragon that Zhuge Xingfeng had turned into. Roar! Zhuge Xingfeng immediately let out a miserable howl as his two dragon claws were shattered. Break! However, he did not retreat half a step. He raised his huge dragon tail and slapped at the divine dragon seal. With a boom, the divine dragon seal was smashed into pieces. Qin Feiyang's body trembled slightly, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Not bad. You can compete with the first move of the divine dragon technique. However, the divine dragon technique still has 3 moves. How many can you withstand? Qin Feiyang murmured. The purple gold dragon chi surged, and a purple gold divine dragon appeared in the sky. Divine dragon roar. The purple gold divine dragon let out a loud roar. Waves of invisible sound waves suddenly appeared and rushed toward Zhuge Xingfeng like a tide. Roar! In an instant, the sound waves arrived. Like a sharp blade, they drowned Zhuge Xingfeng. Zhuge Xingfeng's beast body was immediately torn apart, and he howled again and again. Qin Feiyang, even if I die, I will drag you to hell with me. Black moon. Eclipse. Eclipse moon. Blood waves. Blood thunder. Blood dragon. Innate superpower, blood dragon eye. Zhuge Xingfeng roared unwillingly. In the blink of an eye, he had evolved all the divine arts and even activated his fighting soul. His fighting soul was also a blood dragon. In an instant, the entire back mountain of the imperial palace was drowned in divine power. Countless beasts fled at the sight of this. The Kirin army guarding the entrance, as well as the red-clothed woman and others who had fled to the entrance, all looked in the direction of Qin Feiyang and Zhuge Xingfeng in horror. What a terrifying aura! But they also knew that Zhuge Xingfeng had reached the end of his road. With you, Qin Feiyang, to die with me, even if I die, it will be worth it. Zhuge Xingfeng laughed again and again. With all the divine arts and fighting soul, he forcibly shattered the sound waves and charged toward Qin Feiyang. But Qin Feiyang was very calm. There was even a hint of appreciation in his eyes. If he remembered correctly, Zhuge Mingyang had only inherited the first and second moves of Eclipse Moon, but this person had obtained the third move. No wonder he was the number 1 in the War God Temple. However, he would not show mercy to his enemies. Boom! Qin Feiyang raised his arm and pointed to the sky. There was a sudden loud noise in the sky. The wind suddenly blew, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. The next moment, a statue appeared, and its divine power shook all directions. The third move of the divine dragon art, supreme of 9 and 5. It's your honor to die under the third move of the divine dragon art. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and waved his hand. The statue raised the broken sword and slashed toward Zhuge Xingfeng. This slash was about to split the void. Stop! But at this moment, an old voice resounded from the depths of the cave. Following closely, a magnificent godly aura surged toward Qin Nan like a thunderbolt, drowning the sky. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. He had actually awakened the fake god in the depths. However, not only did he not stop, the murderous intent in his eyes became even more terrifying. The broken sword fell mercilessly, and the sharpness was destructive. Zhuge Xingfeng's divine arts and fighting soul were instantly turned into ashes. Zhuge Xingfeng's beast body was also split in half by the sword, and blood stained the sky. From now on, Zhuge Xingfeng will no longer exist in this world. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly, turned around and used phantom steps, and rushed toward the entrance without looking back. The emperor's statue dissipated as well. Soon, an old man in black descended above the broken mountain range, looking at Zhuge Xingfeng's corpse with a strong murderous intent in his eyes. Qin Feiyang, Why did you come back? He suddenly turned around, locked onto Qin Feiyang's disappearing figure, and roared angrily. Qin Feiyang did not respond. The appearance of the fake god was somewhat unexpected. Therefore, he had to hurry and meet up with the Thunder Leopard, Wang Yangfeng, and the others. Otherwise, everyone would be in danger. Chapter 1393. Seeing that Qin Feiyang ignored him, the black-robed old man flew into a rage out of humiliation. Swoosh! He took a step forward and traversed dozens of kilometers in an instant. He was several times faster than Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang raised his brows. Initially, he wanted to kill Zhuge Mingyang and the others while he was at it. That was because he knew that Zhuge Mingyang and the others would definitely stop at the entrance and watch. However, it seemed that he could not do that now. The black-robed old man was too fast. He would probably catch up to him before he could reach the entrance. I have to admit that you're really lucky, Qin Feiyang muttered, and immediately took out a teleportation gate. This was not the first time he wanted to kill Zhuge Mingyang, but someone would disrupt his plans every time. Boom. However, just as he was about to open the teleportation gate, a deafening sound suddenly came from the entrance. Ah! Following that, screams of pain and despair could be heard. Qin Feiyang was bewildered. The black-robed old man also looked at the entrance immediately with a cold glint in his eyes. It's Lei Bao and the others. The next moment, Qin Feiyang's face revealed a trace of pleasant surprise. He immediately opened the teleportation door and rushed in without looking back. That was right. At the entrance, he sensed the auras of Lei Bao, Wang Yangfeng, and the others. I won't give you another chance to escape. The black-robed old man retracted his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyang. He waved his hand and an invisible force surged towards the teleportation gate like a tide. It was extremely fast. In less than half a blink of an eye, the teleportation gate was smashed into pieces. At the same time that the teleportation gate shattered, Qin Feiyang also fell out of the void, and his entire body was dripping with blood. Qin Feiyang's expression was dark as water. He consumed a healing pill and turned to the black-robed old man. You're a member of the Great Qin. Why are you helping the evildoer? The black-robed old man said. It's precisely because I'm a member of the Great Qin that I won't allow you to be presumptuous in the capital. I'm presumptuous? Haha. Qin Feiyang threw his head back and laughed maniacally. Everything he had done was for Great Qin's safety, but now, these people viewed him as an evil person. How pitiful. Stop struggling and obediently surrender. Wait for Lord Emperor Hong's punishment, so that you won't suffer any more physical pain. The black-clothed old man advised. In your dreams, Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and said, one day, all of you will understand exactly who was right and who was wrong in all of this. Whoosh. Finished speaking. Qin Feiyang decisively entered the ancient castle and drove it towards the entrance at lightning speed. Stubborn. The black-robed old man's eyes turned cold as his divine sense spread out in all directions. In an instant, he immediately released his aura and pounced towards the ancient castle. But in the end, however, he was shocked to find that his false god's aura was unable to restrain the ancient castle. If it was in the past, the oppressive might of a semi-divinity realm cultivator would have been able to seal the ancient castle. But things were different now. The first seal of the ancient castle had been removed. Whether it was ability or power, it was far greater than before. Now the only person who could restrain the ancient castle was probably the true war god. And just as the black-clothed old man was distracted, Qin Feiyang had already driven the ancient castle and pulled a long distance away. He could already vaguely see the entrance. The back mountain of the imperial palace is really dangerous. Qin Feiyang was still in fear. The scene changed and locked onto the rear. Teleportation gate. Immediately, Qin Feiyang's expression changed abruptly. However, in the void behind him, there was no trace of the black-clothed old man. Only a dissipating teleportation gate. Could it be suddenly? He seemed to have thought of something, and his gaze trembled slightly. He hurriedly changed the scene and locked onto the direction of the entrance. However, because the distance was still a little far, he couldn't see it clearly. But his heart was uneasy. He suspected that the black-clothed old man had most likely opened the teleportation gate and went directly to the entrance. If that was the case, then Thunder Leopard, the three beasts, Wang Yangfeng and the others would be in big trouble. The distance between the ancient castle and the entrance was getting closer and closer. 5 or 6 breaths later. Finally, the situation at the entrance could be seen clearly. And when Qin Feiyang saw the situation at the entrance, his face suddenly became gloomy. Thunder Leopard, the three beasts, Wang Yangfeng and the others were indeed at the entrance. And the black-clothed old man was standing above their heads at this moment, his divine power surging and shaking in all directions. Moreover, everyone stood motionless in the void. Obviously, they were all imprisoned by the black-clothed old man's divine power. And the Kirin army guarding the entrance were all standing in the distance, cautiously vigilant. Qin Feiyang drove the ancient castle and stopped in the void not far from the black-clothed old man. His face was gloomy. The black-clothed old man scanned the void and said lightly, "If you don't want them to die, come out immediately." "Young master, don't come out. It doesn't matter if we die, but you must not fall into the hands of the imperial preceptor. Don't worry about us, go quickly." Wang Yangfeng and the others roared. But before they finished speaking, Qin Feiyang appeared out of thin air. The black-clothed old man looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "As the rumors say, you are indeed a person who values friendship and righteousness, but sometimes being too loyal will get you killed." Qin Feiyang ignored him and lowered his head to look down. On the ground below, there were corpses lying quietly, still bleeding. They were the group of people who were with Zhuge Xingfeng before. Qin Feiyang glanced at them one by one and raised his eyebrows slightly. He looked at Wang Yangfeng and the others and asked, "Where's Zhuge Mingyang? Why don't I see his body?" Everyone was stunned. Wang Yangfeng asked, "Didn't you kill him?" Qin Feiyang shook his head. Wang Yangfeng said, "When we came we didn't see him either. We thought you had already killed him." Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. It seemed that Zhuge Mingyang had been escorted away in advance. "Qin Feiyang, do you think I don't exist?" The black-clothed old man was furious. How dare he talk about Zhuge Mingyang unscrupulously in front of him? What did that put him in? He was a fake god after all. Couldn't they show him some respect? Noisy. However, facing the black-clothed old man's anger, Qin Feiyang was not nervous at all. Instead, he shouted at the black-clothed old man ruthlessly. The black-clothed old man was dumbfounded. Was there something wrong with this kid? How dare he scold him? Did he know what kind of situation he was in now? The Kirin army was also dumbfounded. This guy's courage was indeed not for show. Qin Feiyang looked at the black-clothed old man and said indifferently, "Do you think I escaped into the castle because I was afraid of you? If not because you were afraid of me, then why?" The black-clothed old man frowned and asked, "It's because I don't want to kill you. After all, you're loyal to the great Qin. You're just being confused by the state preceptor." Qin Feiyang said. In fact, he was pretending to be calm, because at this time, he couldn't show the slightest bit of guilt or panic. Otherwise, it would lead to a fatal disaster. "You don't want to kill me?" The black-clothed old man was petrified again. Was there something wrong with this kid's head? Is your memory that bad? It seems that I have to remind you. Who saved me not long ago in the central square? Qin Feiyang sneered. Hearing this, the black-clothed old man's eyes trembled. He quickly scanned the void, his eyes full of vigilance. You remember now, right? Although Elder Qin and Lu Xingchen are not here now, I still have 10 fake gods with me. They are hiding nearby now watching you. As long as I give the order, the entire imperial palace will be destroyed in an instant. Now tell me, do I have the ability to kill you? Qin Feiyang sneered. The black-clothed old man's heart sank. Now that Emperor Hong and the state preceptor had gone to rescue the little prince, if Qin Feiyang started a massacre at this time, no one would be able to stop him. He did not doubt Qin Feiyang's words. First, Qin Feiyang was too calm. Second, those 10 fake gods, he did see them with his own eyes, and he also heard them call Qin Feiyang young master. Wait, why did Qin Feiyang say that he was confused by the state preceptor? He looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, what do you mean by that sentence? Confused by the state preceptor? What did he confuse us about? Qin Feiyang's heart moved. He looked at the Kirin army and shouted, "Get lost immediately!" Hearing that, without exception, all the Kirin army's faces suddenly changed, and they hurriedly turned around and fled. After they left, Qin Feiyang looked at the black-clothed old man again and said, "If I told you that everything that Emperor Hong said in the central square today was a lie, would you believe it?" The black-clothed old man said angrily, "Don't talk nonsense. Who is Emperor Hong? Would he lie to everyone?" I knew you would have this reaction. But let me tell you, he was full of lies. I didn't kill the emperor. Because he didn't die at all. He's somewhere right now, enjoying himself. I didn't steal the imperial jade seal either. I snatched it from the emperor's hands in broad daylight. Also, Old Qin and the commander of the Kirin army did not betray them, because they are the same as you, loyal to the great Qin. Qin Feiyang said. The black-clothed old man's face was stunned. After a long time, he finally recovered and asked, "Are you sure that His Majesty is not dead?" "Yes. The incident of the emperor being killed in the imperial study was purely a trap set by the emperor himself." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Why did he do that? Where is he now?" The black-clothed old man frowned. "I don't know why he did that. As for where he is, I don't want to talk too much. If you have the chance, you can ask Old Qin and the commander of the Kirin army. They all know." Qin Feiyang said. The black-clothed old man's eyes showed a hint of struggle. He really didn't know whether he should believe Qin Feiyang's words or not. "Whether you believe it or not, you must release him today. Otherwise, I will slaughter the entire imperial palace. Don't doubt my words. I believe that you have already understood my character from the mouths of others. Since I dare to say it, then I will definitely do it." As for the imperial preceptor and Emperor Hong, in order to rescue the little prince, I'm afraid they won't be able to return for a while, Qin Feiyang said indifferently. The black-clothed old man's pupils constricted, and he said in a deep voice, "Using the little prince to trick the imperial preceptor and Emperor Hong, and slaughtering the entire Zhuge family, you really know how to scheme. You flatter me. But have you thought about it? From the moment I entered the imperial city until now, other than the people of the Zhuge family, have I killed anyone else? No. I killed all the people of the Zhuge family." Chapter 1394. Why? Did the Zhuge family do something to you? The black-clothed old man asked. "It's not a personal grudge." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Then why?" The black-clothed old man frowned. Qin Feiyang's eyes were cold as he said word by word. "Because they are thinking about my great Qin's empire." "What?" The black-clothed old man's eyes trembled. "I know, with my current situation, no matter what I say, you won't really believe me. I don't want to waste my breath anymore. Let them go," Qin Feiyang said lightly. The black-clothed old man looked deeply at Qin Feiyang, and withdrew his pressure. Lei Bao, Wang Yangfeng, and the others immediately ran behind Qin Feiyang, as if they were running for their lives, their faces full of fear. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and sent everyone to the castle. Then he looked at the black-clothed old man and asked, "What's your name?" "Qin Sheng," the black-clothed old man said. "You'd better hide all the words I said to you in your heart. Don't mention it to anyone, especially the state preceptor and Emperor Hong. Otherwise, it will bring you a fatal disaster," Qin Feiyang warned. Qin Sheng frowned. "Was it that serious?" "Don't doubt it. Because Old Man Qin is a good example," Qin Feiyang said meaningfully. Then he activated the teleportation door and left the large palace without looking back. Emperor Hong lied? His Majesty is not dead. Who is telling the truth? After the portal dissipated, Qin Sheng retracted his gaze, lowered his head, and muttered to himself. Outside the city, in the sky above a certain forest, Qin Feiyang appeared out of thin air. His face was also full of lingering fear. If it weren't for the last-minute plan to deceive Qin Sheng, Lei Bao, Wang Yangfeng, and the others would have been doomed. But then again, although this time he almost fell and didn't go to the law enforcement hall, the harvest was still great. Not only did he get rid of the entire Zhuge family, but he also figured out Qin Sheng's position. Previously, Although Qin Sheng did not express his opinion directly, it was not difficult to tell from Qin Sheng's expression that if everything he said was true, then Qin Sheng would definitely stand on his side. One had to know. Qin Sheng was a veteran false god. If he really became an ally, it would be of great help to him. Whoosh! Letting out a long breath, Qin Feiyang entered the castle. Looking at Lei Bao, Wang Yangfeng, and the others, he asked, "How was it?" "Not a single survivor. The entire Zhuge manor has been razed to the ground. Furthermore, we also found a treasure vault in the Zhuge family, and obtained a large amount of wealth and medicinal herbs. They are all with old man Wang." Lei Bao snickered. "Very good." Qin Feiyang nodded. He looked at Wang Yangfeng and said, "Give those things to Fatso and Dan Wangkai. Let them sort them out." "All right." Wang Yangfeng nodded. With a wave of his hand, dozens of cosmos sacks appeared and piled up on the ground. So many. Qin Feiyang was shocked. Fatso and Dan Wangkai immediately surrounded him, their eyes shining with greed. Wang Yangfeng shook his head in amusement. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. He turned to Qin Feiyang and asked, "Young master, are the 10 false gods of the Lu family really at the back mountain of the imperial palace?" "I lied to Qin Sheng." Qin Feiyang smiled. "Lied?" Everyone looked at each other. He was too good at pretending. Previously, when they saw Qin Feiyang's calm expression, even they believed it to be true. Qin Feiyang smiled and took out the image crystal. Lu Hong opened her eyes at this time and sighed. "It's a pity that although we eliminated the Zhuge family, we didn't manage to kill Zhuge Mingyang. This person's threat can't be underestimated. There will be a chance sooner or later." Qin Feiyang snorted and activated the image crystal. Buzz. Soon, old man Qin's shadow appeared in the void in front of him. "Give me your current coordinates," Qin Feiyang said. Old man Qin immediately gave Qin Feiyang a coordinate. Qin Feiyang put away the image crystal, left the castle, opened the teleportation door, and arrived in the sky above a mountain. As soon as he appeared, he sensed 4 terrifying auras. Moreover, there was also a tense atmosphere. He looked down and saw a huge mountain peak below. At the peak of the mountain, old man Qin and Lu Xingqian stood together. Lu Xingqian grabbed the little prince, and a wisp of divine sense floated in front of him, emitting a great pressure. Old man Qin held the Chang Shui in his hand and stared at the state preceptor and Emperor Hong opposite him. On the other side, the state preceptor and Emperor Hong stood side by side, their bodies also surrounded by killing intent. "So lively." Qin Feiyang chuckled and landed beside old man Qin. The state preceptor's gaze turned and landed on Qin Feiyang, and said in a deep voice, "What did you do to the Zhuge family?" "Is there a need to say that?" "Not a single one was left alive. Killed them all, including Zhuge Wuho, Zhuge Nanhua, and Zhuge Nangong, the 2 Peak Realm 9-star War Emperor-s." Qin Feiyang laughed. "You beast." Hearing this, the state preceptor was furious. Old man Qin sneered. Don't move, the Chang Shui in this old man's hands is not to be trifled with." Upon hearing Chang Shui, the state preceptor's pupils suddenly contracted, filled with fear. "Right. And the monsters of the Zhuge family in the War God Shrine, they were all killed by me." Qin Feiyang said again. "What?" The state preceptor's body trembled and asked, "What about Zhuge Xingfeng and Zhuge Mingyang?" "I killed Zhuge Xingfeng with my own hands. As for Zhuge Mingyang, he was lucky enough to escape." Qin Feiyang said regretfully. "Bastard." The state preceptor immediately roared, and his eyes turned blood red, like a wild beast that had gone berserk. Qin Feiyang asked curiously, "You care so much about Zhuge Xingfeng? Just who is the descendant of the Zhuge family?" The state preceptor turned a deaf ear to him and said sinisterly, "Just you wait, this state preceptor will definitely make you pay with your blood. I'm waiting every day. Bring it on at any time." Qin Feiyang sneered. At this time, Emperor Hong said expressionlessly, "Your goal has been achieved. It's time to let the little prince go." Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, "Return it to them. Catch it well. If you fall to your death, I won't be responsible." Lu Xingqian laughed coldly, picked up the little prince, and threw him towards Emperor Hong. The little prince was currently in a coma and didn't know anything. Emperor Hong hurriedly stepped forward and reached out to hug the little prince. Seeing that the little prince had only fainted, he heaved a sigh of relief. Bastard, die. Just as Emperor Hong caught the little prince, the state preceptor suddenly exploded and slapped towards Qin Feiyang. Old Man Qin and Lu Xingqian looked at each other, a cold light flashing in their eyes. The power of the false god and consciousness immediately rushed towards Chang Shui. Clang! Chang Shui immediately released a world-destroying divine might and sharpness. Emperor Hong's expression changed as he looked at the state preceptor and shouted, "What are you doing? Stop!" The state preceptor unwillingly stopped in his tracks. Emperor Hong waved his hand, and a teleportation gate opened. He said gloomily, "Go." With that, he stepped into the teleportation gate without looking back. The state preceptor did not move. He stared at Qin Feiyang, his old eyes filled with ferocity. "If you want to fight, then fight. If you don't want to fight, then scram. What are you waiting for?" Qin Feiyang looked at him provocatively. The state preceptor couldn't help but clench his fists tightly, making cracking sounds. His face was so gloomy that it was frightening. However, when he saw the Chang Shui in Old Man Qin's hands, a trace of fear crept into his eyes. He had already seen the power of Chang Shui when he fought with Renduxing last time. Even a divine artifact could be easily destroyed. If Old Man Qin and Old Man Qin really revived Chang Shui, even if he and Emperor Hong joined hands, they might not be a match. Emperor Hong stood in the teleportation gate and looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two. He looked impatiently at the state preceptor and shouted, "I told you to leave, didn't you hear me?" Boom. The state preceptor stomped on the ground, and the entire mountain instantly collapsed with a deafening sound. Thick smoke covered the sky. One day, your fate will be the same as this giant mountain. Perhaps, it will be even worse than this giant mountain. After leaving behind these harsh words, the state preceptor turned around and entered the teleportation gate. Soon, the two of them and the little prince disappeared from the sight of Qin Feiyang and the other two. How delightful! Lu Xingqian laughed loudly. Old Man Qin also laughed. After returning the Chang Shui to Qin Feiyang, he gave Qin Feiyang a thumbs up and praised, "Well done. Now that the Zhuge family has been completely annihilated, the state preceptor has lost his left and right arms. In a short period of time, he definitely won't dare to stir up trouble again." No. Although the Zhuge family has been destroyed, there is still the Law Enforcement Hall. The people of the Law Enforcement Hall are all the confidants of the state preceptor. These people can't be underestimated. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Lu Xingqian stopped laughing and frowned. "Then why didn't you get rid of them all just now?" Qin Feiyang said helplessly, "I also want to, but a fake god has awakened in the back mountain, so I have to give up." "What bad luck!" Lu Xingqian cursed in his heart. Old Man Qin glanced at Lu Xingqian and transmitted his voice to Qin Feiyang. "I think we can't kill the people of the Law Enforcement Hall." "Why?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Although they are the confidants of the state preceptor, they are after all the people of the Great Qin. As long as we get rid of the state preceptor, I believe that they will definitely turn over a new leaf. Old Man Qin said. "Turn over a new leaf," Qin Feiyang murmured. The old man in front of him was still too benevolent, and thought of everything as simple. However, he couldn't refute it face to face. Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Xingqian and asked, "What are you going to do next?" "Now I definitely can't go back to the temple. Let's find a place to meditate and wait for the miracle to open." Lu Xingqian smiled and said, a light flashing in the depths of his eyes. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and said, "You want to go to the miracle so much. What exactly is there in the miracle that makes you envious? Who in this world doesn't want to go to the miracle? Aren't you also looking forward to it?" Lu Xingqian said. Qin Feiyang looked at him meaningfully and said, "Then let's part ways for the time being." Lu Xingqian smiled, looked at Old Man Qin and said with a smile, "Old Man Qin, this cooperation was very pleasant. I hope there will be a next time." Finished. Lu Xingqian flashed and disappeared without a trace. However, at this moment, in the sky above the imperial city, a loud sound suddenly exploded, like a thunderclap, deafening. Qin Feiyang and Old Man Qin froze and immediately raised their heads to look. Lu Xingqian, who had just disappeared, once again appeared beside the two of them, looking at the sky above the imperial city in surprise. At the same time, the state preceptor and Emperor Hong, who had just returned to the imperial palace, didn't have time to wake up the little prince. Hearing the loud sound in the sky, they immediately looked up. And Qinsheng. He stood in the air at the entrance and looked up at the sky above the first city district. His old face was also full of surprise, because the loud sound came from the sky above the central square of the first city district. Chapter 1395. The loud sound was like thunder, and the lingering sound rumbled, echoing over the imperial city for a long time. However, under the watchful eyes of everyone, the loud sound gradually subsided, and nothing appeared in the sky above the first city district. Everything returned to calm. What's going on? Old Qin's face was full of surprise. Qin Feiyang and Lu Xingqian on the side were also full of suspicion. Why would there be a loud sound for no reason? It's really strange. A moment later, Lu Xingqian muttered, looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "Let's meet again when the miracle opens." After saying that, he was ready to enter the space divine object. Boom. However, at this moment, another deafening explosion erupted. It still came from the sky above the central square of the first city district. What's the situation? Lu Xingqian raised his eyebrows and looked up again. Rumble, but this time, that loud sound did not disappear, and it kept roaring over the first city district, as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting, deafening. At this moment, there were also countless people gathered in the central square. Everyone raised their heads one after another, looking at the void above, their eyes full of suspicion. Look! The void is twisting. Suddenly, someone pointed to a certain void and roared. Immediately, everyone looked at the void that the person pointed to, and their faces changed greatly. That void was indeed twisting. Moreover, it was spreading crazily in all directions. In the end, the entire sky above the square trembled violently. That scene, coupled with the endless rumbling sound, felt like some peerless monster was born. Swish! Above the fragrant moon house, two figures suddenly appeared. It was the imperial preceptor and Emperor Hong. What the hell is going on? The imperial preceptor raised his eyebrows. This kind of thing has never happened before, and this old man doesn't know. Emperor Hong shook his head. Greetings, Emperor Hong. Greetings, imperial preceptor. A figure cut through the sky, landed in front of the two, and bowed respectfully. It was Yen Wei. The imperial preceptor retracted his gaze, looked at Yen Wei, and asked, "What's the situation of the Zhuge family?" "It's all gone, leaving only ruins." Yen Wei sighed. Damn it. The imperial preceptor clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. He looked as if he wanted to eat someone. The ancestors of the Zhuge clan were marquises personally conferred by the late emperor. They have been passed down from generation to generation. Qin Feiyang massacring the Zhuge clan is tantamount to offending the late emperor's divine might. Lord Emperor Hong, please punish Qin Feiyang severely and give the Zhuge family justice. Yen Wei's eyes flashed, and he knelt in front of Emperor Hong, crying out in grief. The imperial advisor glanced at Yen Wei, then faced Emperor Hong and cupped his hands. "My lord, please forgive my subordinate's offense and rudeness, but what he said is reasonable. If Qin Feiyang is not eliminated, I'm afraid it will be difficult to convince the masses." Emperor Hong remained silent. Also, before the previous emperor left, he left behind an imperial order. The 100 martial marquises of the Great Qin cannot be more or less. Therefore, this lowly one earnestly requests Lord Emperor Hong to allow Zhuge Mingyang to inherit the position of Zhuge Wuhou. Yen Wei said again. Let Mingyang inherit the position of Martial Marquis? The imperial advisor was slightly stunned. Although Zhuge Mingyang is young, he is the only child left in this world by Zhuge Wuhou. Furthermore, Zhuge Mingyang's talent is obvious to everyone. For him to inherit the position of Zhuge Wuhou, this lowly one believes that it is the most suitable. Yen Wei said. Hearing these words, The imperial advisor couldn't help but secretly give a thumbs up to Yan Wei. He also liked Yan Wei more and more. Emperor Hong pondered for a moment, then nodded and said, "The position of Marshal Marquis of the Zhuge family cannot be left vacant for too long. This old man will seriously consider your suggestion." Yan Wei was overjoyed, and knelt in the air. "Then this lowly one will represent the dead Zhuge family to thank Lord Emperor Hong." "You may rise," Emperor Hong said. "Yes." Yan Wei stood up and respectfully stood behind the imperial advisor. Emperor Hong glanced at Yan Wei, then looked at the imperial advisor and smiled. "I didn't expect that there would be such a sensible person by your side." "You're too kind." The imperial advisor hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Lord Emperor Hong, don't blame him for talking too much. He is indeed a bit talkative," Emperor Hong said. Yan Wei's face immediately revealed a trace of nervousness. Originally, he wanted to perform well in front of the imperial advisor, and let the imperial advisor trust him more. But he didn't expect that he would actually anger Emperor Hong. However, although he is a bit talkative, what he said and what he thought were all reasonable. My great Qin also needs a talent like him who dares to speak and do. Nurture him well. In the future, he will definitely become your right-hand man. Emperor Hong looked at the imperial advisor and said with a smile. The imperial advisor was stunned. He never thought that Emperor Hong would actually say such words. After coming back to his senses, he hurriedly looked at Yan Wei and said, "Why haven't you thanked Lord Emperor Hong?" Yan Wei quivered and hurriedly bowed. "Thank you, Your Excellency." Emperor Hong nodded his head and raised his head to look at the void above again. The imperial advisor glanced at Emperor Hong and transmitted his voice to Yan Wei. "Your performance this time is very good." After settling the matters at hand, this old man will reward you with a divine art. Divine art? Yan Wei's body trembled, and he secretly said, "Your Excellency, did this subordinate hear wrongly?" "No," the imperial advisor said. Yan Wei was wild with joy and hurriedly thanked. "Many thanks for Your Excellency's kindness of grooming. From today onwards, this lowly one will definitely do my best for Your Excellency, until my death." This was truly a meat pie falling from the sky, too unexpected. Similarly, it also meant that the imperial advisor already completely trusted him, and was prepared to nurture him as a trusted aide. Just as Yan Wei was secretly rejoicing, in the void not far away, another 3 figures suddenly appeared. The moment these 3 people appeared, it immediately caused a commotion. Because these 3 people were precisely Qin Feiyang, Lu Xingqian, as well as Elder Qin. After slaughtering the entire Zhuge family, they actually still dare to brazenly come to the central plaza? Do they think that Emperor Hong and the imperial advisor don't exist? The people discussed animatedly, their eyes full of fear. But within the fear, there was also some hatred mixed in. The Zhuge family was slaughtered from top to bottom. To be able to do such a tragic thing, this Qin Feiyang was truly inhumane. At the same time, sensing the auras of Qin Feiyang trio appear, Emperor Hong, the imperial advisor, and Yan Wei also immediately retracted their gazes and looked at Qin Feiyang trio. Emperor Hong's expression was still indifferent, but the imperial advisor and Yan Wei's faces were full of anger. The imperial advisor disregarded his status and directly shouted, "This place does not welcome beasts, scram immediately." Qin Feiyang glanced at him indifferently, took out Chang Shui, and threw it to Elder Qin. Elder Qin grabbed Chang Shui and turned his head to look at the imperial advisor without saying a word, his eyes full of contempt. Although he didn't say anything, that contemptuous attitude was enough to explain everything. "I have Chang Shui in my hands. What can you do to me? If you have the guts, then come and drive us away. See if I don't destroy you." As for Lu Xingqian, even more so, his disdain was displayed incisively and vividly. From beginning to end, he didn't even look at Emperor Hong and the other 2. As soon as he appeared, he raised his head and stared at the void above. The imperial advisor blew his beard and glared, angry to the extreme. But the Chang Shui and Elder Qin's hands was like a towering mountain, pressing down on him until he couldn't breathe. I really didn't expect that such a highly respected person like Elder Qin would actually collude with Qin Feiyang to usurp the throne. This is in line with the old saying, you can't judge a book by its cover. Often, people who look very honest on the surface are very treacherous in their hearts. Someone in the crowd snorted coldly, full of sarcasm. Elder Qin was originally fine. But when he heard this, he immediately bristled with anger and roared. What do you know? What qualifications do you have to criticize this old man here? A traitor everyone has the right to kill. Can't we talk about it? Since you dare to do it, don't be afraid of us saying it. His Majesty trusted you so much in vain, but in the end, you are a white-eyed wolf. Disgusting. Look at Lord Imperial Advisor. He is upright, selfless, and loyal to the Great Qin. They are both pillars of the Great Qin. Why is the difference between you two so great? The crowd began to clamor without restraint, because with the Imperial Advisor and Emperor Hong holding down the fort, they were not afraid. Preposterous, preposterous. Elder Qin was so angry that he was about to vomit blood. A person who sincerely wanted the good of the Great Qin was reviled by others. A person who truly wanted to usurp the throne was praised by the people of the world. What kind of justice was this? The Imperial Advisor looked at all of this with a smug expression. Old man, do you see that? This is a method. Although I lost a lot, I gained the hearts of the people. And you? Now you are like a rat crossing the street. Everyone is shouting to beat you up. Do you feel very sullen in your heart? The Imperial Advisor sent a message to Elder Qin, his words full of sarcasm. Hearing this, Elder Qin stared at the Imperial Advisor, his body trembling. Puff. Finally. He was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. And Qin Feiyang and Lu Xingqian were shocked. They hurriedly looked at Elder Qin and asked with concern, Are you all right? I'm fine. Elder Qin waved his hand. Qin Feiyang looked at the Imperial Advisor and frowned. Then he retracted his gaze and said to Elder Qin in a low voice, Why do you have to be so serious? As long as you have a clear conscience, it's fine. That's right. To argue with a group of ignorant people. Aren't you looking for trouble? Lu Xingqian shook his head helplessly. Looking at Qin Feiyang and Lu Xingqian's calm expressions, Elder Qin could not help but feel ashamed. He was an old antique who had lived for thousands of years, but his mentality could not keep up with the two little fellows. He was truly ashamed. It seems that this old man's state of mind still needs to be improved. Elder Qin smiled bitterly, wiped off the blood from the corner of his mouth, took a deep breath, and finally calmed down the anger in his heart. Qin Feiyang patted Elder Qin's shoulder, raised his head to look at the Imperial Advisor and Emperor Hong, and said indifferently, What people do, the heavens are watching. Your despicable deeds will be exposed to the world sooner or later. At that time, I want to see how you will face the hundreds of millions of people of my Great Qin. Speaking of which, Qin Feiyang's gaze turned, only looking at Emperor Hong, and sneered. Especially you, Lord Emperor Hong. The meaning behind his words was that as the son of the ancestor, Emperor Hong, it would be even more difficult to clean up the mess. Emperor Hong said indifferently, Young people are full of vigor, but this old man wants to tell you something. Ginger is still spicier as it gets older. Then I'll tell you something too. An old man should hide and enjoy life. Don't come out blindly, lest you end up with a bad ending. Qin Feiyang chuckled. Arrogant. This bastard is too arrogant. He actually cursed his own great-grandfather like that. He still has no conscience, no humanity. Everyone was indignant. Chapter 1396. Seeing Emperor Hong's face darken, Qin Feiyang did not feel the slightest bit of guilt in his heart. Instead, he was extremely happy. He turned his head to look at Lu Xingqian and asked with a smile, Is there something wrong with what I said? Lu Xingqian crossed his arms across his chest, looked at Emperor Hong mockingly and said, Of course there's nothing wrong with it. Emperor Hong stared at the two of them, his face becoming more and more gloomy. Qin Feiyang and Lu Xingqian looked at each other, and then looked at Emperor Hong in unison, their eyes full of provocation. The atmosphere here gradually became solemn. I can't help it. These two are too arrogant. If we don't kill them, the heavens will not tolerate it. In the crowd, a middle-aged man suddenly roared, carrying a monstrous emperor's might, and charged towards Qin Feiyang and Lu Xingqian. This person was wearing a pair of large black pants. His upper body was exposed, and he was filled with a wild aura, and his cultivation had reached the 9-star war emperor. Yes. Kill them, get rid of evil for the people. Among the crowd, 3 more people rushed out. They were also 9-star war emperor, wearing black robes. So many 9-star war emperor? Qin Feiyang was surprised. And these 4 people were all unfamiliar faces, and there were no signs on their bodies. Retreat. Almost at the same time, the Imperial Preceptor's roar rang out. Qin Feiyang looked at the Imperial Preceptor, and found that the Imperial Preceptor's face was anxious. Immediately, Qin Feiyang revealed a look of realization. Looking at these 4 people, they should be the inner hall's law enforcers. Since they were the Imperial Preceptor's confidants, then he would not be polite. Boom. He raised his hand and waved it. The first move of the ruins art, landslide, instantly appeared. With a terrifying divine might, it blasted towards the 4 people. You dare. The Imperial Preceptor was furious and was about to make a move. It's not your turn to interfere. But Elder Qin took a step forward and stood in front of the Imperial Preceptor. Killing intent surged in his eyes, and the Chang Shui in his hand was also buzzing. The Imperial Preceptor immediately became vigilant. An invisible force arrived in an instant. Accompanied by a series of screams, the bodies of the 4 people were torn apart on the spot, and blood stained the sky. One had to know. Qin Feiyang had yet to deactivate the kill formula. His cultivation had reached the peak of the 9-star combat emperor realm. With the divine art, killing 4 ordinary 9-star combat emperors was as easy as drinking water. However, this scene caused the people below to no longer dare to utter a word. He actually dared to kill in front of the Imperial Advisor and Emperor Hong? Oh my God! Does this guy have any regard for the law? Who dares to be noisy? Qin Feiyang's blood-red hair fluttered in the wind. His killing intent soared to the heavens as he coldly swept his gaze over the crowd. No one dared to look him in the eye, not even daring to breathe loudly. A moment later, Qin Feiyang finally withdrew his gaze. His big hand made a grabbing motion in the air, and the 4 people's Qianquan bags flew up into the air and fell into his hand. In these 4 Qianquan bags, he really did find the identity medallion of an inner court law enforcer. Qin Feiyang grinned and looked up at the state preceptor. He chuckled and said, "Sorry, I accidentally killed another 4 of your subordinates." Faced with such a blatant provocation, the state preceptor almost went mad. All of a sudden, he turned his head to look at Emperor Hong and said in a deep voice, "Your Excellency, we really can't let him continue to be so arrogant. Otherwise, the world will definitely talk behind our backs. Our great Qin Empire is incompetent." Emperor Hong looked at Qin Feiyang gloomily. He suddenly rushed into the clouds and looked down at Qin Feiyang and the other 2. He said word by word, "Come up and fight with this old man." Killing intent flashed in the state preceptor's eyes as he also rushed to Emperor Hong's side. Looking at the indifferent Qin Feiyang and the other 2, he laughed sinisterly. "It's finally as you wish. What are you still hesitating for? You want to fight? All right. This old man will accompany you." Elder Qin took a step forward. His entire body emitted a monstrous aura as he walked up to the peak of the clouds step by step. We've finally started the battle. The people below were all looking forward to it. Clang. However, right at this moment, in the sky above the plaza, a loud sound of metal colliding suddenly exploded. This loud sound was several times louder than the previous rumbling sound. Moreover, it carried an extremely strong penetrating force. Those below the 9-star war emperor had their eardrums torn apart on the spot as blood spurted out. Everyone was shocked. Just what was the birth of this thing? It was actually so terrifying. Qin Feiyang, Lu Xingqian, Elder Qin, the state preceptor, and Emperor Hong all looked towards the source of the sound. Their expressions suddenly changed. The void above the plaza was actually crazily cracking. How could this be? The void shattered. Could it be that a war god had broken through? Or was it the birth of a divine weapon? After Emperor Hong came back to his senses, he immediately shouted to the state preceptor, quickly evacuate the people in the first district. What about Qin Feiyang and the others? The state preceptor asked. We can't control them now. If a war god really descends, then it definitely won't be a good thing. We might even need their help. Emperor Hong said in a deep voice. The state preceptor looked at Elder Qin unwillingly and roared. Everyone leave the first district immediately. His voice was like a loud bell, echoing in everyone's minds. At this moment, the people gathered in the first district immediately turned around and fled towards the second district. Clang! The sound became louder and louder. The entire world was trembling. Right now, not only the imperial city, but all the living beings in the imperial capital could hear this mysterious loud sound. What's going on? This sound seems to be coming from the imperial city. Could it be that Qin Feiyang is causing trouble in the imperial city again? But it shouldn't be. With his cultivation, it's impossible for him to cause such a big commotion. Everyone looked in the direction of the imperial city in bewilderment. Qin Feiyang stared at the shattered void and sent a sound transmission. Elder Qin, quickly come down and prepare to evacuate at any time. Hearing this, Elder Qin immediately swooped down and landed beside Qin Feiyang. His expression was also extremely solemn. Time passed breath by breath. Suddenly, rays of dazzling divine light emerged from the shattered space. As soon as this divine light appeared, a vast and mighty divine might immediately surged out in all directions like a waterfall with the first district as the center. This divine might is so terrifying. At this moment, not only Qin Feiyang, even Emperor Hong and the state preceptor couldn't help but feel panic. This was a divine might that surpassed the false god. It was as if a god had descended, intimidating everyone's heart. However, no one noticed that Lu Xingqian's eyes were flashing with an inexplicable light at this moment. Clang! That loud sound once again exploded, shaking the heavens and earth. Following closely, in the midst of that divine light, a giant stone door actually emerged. The stone door was 999 feet tall and 99 feet wide. Its entire body was suffused with a dark light, like a gate to hell. It stood in the sky above the first district, emitting a shocking aura. A stone door? What is this divine tool? How could it appear out of thin air above the imperial city? Everyone was dumbfounded. What a familiar aura. Qin Feiyang looked at the stone door and muttered to himself. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. His body trembled slightly as he turned his head to look at Lu Xingqian. However, he saw Lu Xingqian looking at the stone door with an expression of unconcealable excitement. Qin Feiyang sent a sound transmission. Why did the space-time gate appear? That's right. This stone door is the Mujia space-time gate. Lu Xingqian secretly said. The space-time gate is in the hands of the snow python. If you want to ask, you should ask her. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and looked up at the space-time gate. Clang! The space-time gate trembled in the void. The divine power was vast and mighty. About 100 breaths passed. With an unprecedented loud noise, the space-time gate stopped trembling, and the shattered void slowly healed. Finally, the space-time gate seemed to be embedded in the void, motionless. The divine light and divine power also gradually dissipated. Could it be that the snow python is coming to the imperial city? Qin Feiyang frowned. The snow python is a real god of war. No one in the world can defeat it. If it really comes to the imperial city, I'm afraid it's not a good thing. I've seen this stone door before. Suddenly, the imperial preceptor said. When did you see it? Emperor Hong was stunned and asked. The imperial preceptor said in a deep voice. When Qin Feiyang sneaked into the divine prison to rescue his mother and friends, there was a masked old man who opened this stone door. It seems to be able to directly teleport to the forgotten continent. The person he was talking about was Yiglao. Yiglao has always been wearing a mask. Not to mention the imperial preceptor, even Qin Feiyang has never seen Yiglao's real face. The masked old man directly teleported to the forgotten continent. The imperial preceptor looked at the stone door and muttered to himself. Suddenly, his gaze trembled. Could it be that artifact? The imperial preceptor looked down at Qin Feiyang and said, Emperor Hong, This should be the reinforcements called by Qin Feiyang. He wants to blatantly snatch the throne. At that time, Yiglao and the mysterious ladies group came to the Great Qin Empire to help Qin Feiyang. So now the imperial preceptor naturally thought that it must be Qin Feiyang who called these people. Boom. And before the imperial preceptor's voice fell, the space-time gate slowly opened with a thunderous sound. It's open. Everyone looked at the stone door nervously. Especially the imperial preceptor. His head was already dripping with sweat. Qin Feiyang already had old Qin Luxingchen, and the 10 fake gods that appeared not long ago. If the people behind the stone door were really Qin Feiyang's helpers, then today would be his end. Boom. When the space-time gate opened a gap, an astonishing aura suddenly rolled out from the gap like a tide. This is the aura of the snow python. Qin Feiyang's gaze trembled. Having known the snow python for so many years, he could recognize the aura of the snow python without seeing it in person. What followed was a head full of doubts. What did the snow python come to the imperial city for? Rumble. The gap in the space-time gate became bigger and bigger. Finally, Qin Feiyang saw the silhouette of the snow python. At this moment, her body was only a meter long. Although her aura was astonishing, she did not release any divine power. She floated behind the space-time gate. Her long and narrow eyes revealed a ruthless indifference. How could it be her? When the imperial preceptor saw the snow python, his face suddenly turned pale. He still remembered the incident that happened in the central divine kingdom. At that time, he was preparing to kill Qin Feiyang, but this snow python suddenly appeared and directly suppressed him, and sent him back to the Great Qin Empire. And with his false god cultivation, he could not resist at all. So he knew very well how terrifying the snow python's strength was. This was an existence that he absolutely could not provoke. However, except for Qin Feiyang and a few others, the others had never seen the snow python before, and their eyes were filled with curiosity, because this situation was greatly beyond their expectations. Chapter 1397. Boom. A moment later, under everyone's gaze, the gate of time and space finally opened completely. The snow python's figure flashed and landed in the sky above the imperial city. Greetings, senior. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, suppressed the uneasiness in his heart, and bowed to the snow python. What's going on? The fearless Qin Feiyang is actually so respectful to it. Everyone was surprised. But then, another scene that made them even more surprised appeared. Greetings, senior. Greetings, lord. Old Qin Emperor Hong and the state preceptor, these 3 pseudo-god level existences, actually all bowed down, including Lu Xingchen. Everyone's hearts were in turmoil. Not only was Qin Feiyang so respectful, even the state preceptor and the others were the same. Just what was the origin of this snow python? The snow python looked down at everyone from above. Finally, her gaze fell on Qin Feiyang, a trace of disdain crawling up her cold eyes, and said, "You are indeed a fiend. No matter where you go, it will not be peaceful." Qin Feiyang's face twitched. In public, can't you leave him some face? However, he faintly discovered that the snow python was a little different from before, but he couldn't tell what was different. Emperor Hong glanced at Qin Feiyang, looked at the snow python and cupped his hands. "May I ask, what is the purpose of your visit to my great Qin?" The snow python looked at the Emperor Hong, and said indifferently, "The miracle has appeared in advance." What? Qin Feiyang's gaze trembled. Lu Xingchen's eyes also immediately emitted a scorching light. Old Qin, the state preceptor, and the Emperor Hong's old eyes were also filled with desire. But other than Qin Feiyang and the others, no one else knew what a miracle was. Revealing a face of suspicion, Qin Feiyang asked, "Senior, you came to the imperial city specifically to tell us this news?" "Yes. The miracle is not personal. Whether it is the people of the Forgotten Continent or the people of the Great Qin Empire, they can all enter. So, in order to make it easier for you to enter the divine ruins, I have specially created a passage to the central divine kingdom using the space-time gate. Before the miracles disappear, the people of the 2 continents can freely travel to the 2 continents through the doors of time and space," the snow python said. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang and the others were bewildered. It means that during this period of time, the Great Qin Empire's people can enter the Forgotten Continent, and the Forgotten Continent's people can also freely enter the Great Qin Empire. Snow Python said coldly. This, Qin Feiyang and the others were shocked beyond words. The people of the two continents could travel freely through the space-time gate? Emperor Hong asked. Your Excellency, according to what you said, before the miracle disappears, this space-time gate will always exist. That's right. The gate of time and space will remain here until the miracle disappears. The Snow Python said. Emperor Hong's face changed and he hurriedly said, This isn't appropriate, right? In the past, the only way to go to the Forgotten Continent was through the teleportation altar in the spiritual state. Moreover, the Snow Python guarding the altar did not allow the people of the two continents to freely enter and exit. Therefore, over the years, no matter what happened, it was the private affairs of the two continents, and they did not interfere with each other. But now, the Snow Python used the gate of time and space to directly open a passage. And this passage was connected to the most important place of the two continents, the imperial capital and the central divine kingdom. The most important thing was that there were no restrictions. Wasn't this the same as directly turning the two continents into one continent? Linking the two continents together, although it seemed to be a good thing, it would actually involve a lot of problems. The biggest problem was the situation. Because of the emperor, the current situation of the Great Qin Empire was already chaotic enough. The little prince had just ascended the throne. Qin Feiyang was also eyeing covetously from the side. If at this time the people of the Forgotten Continent also came to interfere, then for the Great Qin Empire, it would shake the foundation of the empire, and at the most it might be a disaster. Inappropriate? The Snow Python lowered its head to look at Emperor Hong and said lightly, So, your Great Qin Empire doesn't want to go to the miracle? Yes. Emperor Hong nodded without hesitation, and said, But there's no need to use the gate of time and space to connect the two continents. Then what do you think should be done? The Snow Python said. My Great Qin spirit state has a teleportation altar that connects to the Forgotten Continent. We can use the teleportation altar to enter the Forgotten Continent. Emperor Hong said. The Snow Python's gaze turned cold, and said, Don't you know that this sovereign's cultivation place is on the altar? Is there a problem? Emperor Hong was puzzled. Nonsense. There's a big problem. You people of Great Qin go to the Forgotten Continent through the altar every day. How can this sovereign cultivate? The Snow Python said angrily. Seeing the Snow Python angry, Emperor Hong's gaze trembled, and he hurriedly said, I was careless, please forgive me. Humph. Don't be ungrateful. This sovereign is doing this purely for the good of your Great Qin. Because using the gate of time and space to connect the imperial capital and the central divine kingdom can save you a lot of time. The Snow Python snorted coldly. Yes, yes, yes. Emperor Hong nodded repeatedly, then looked at the Snow Python, and carefully said, But sir, I have a small request. Can you not let the people of the Forgotten Continent enter my Great Qin Empire? Are you joking? Only your Great Qin people can enter the Forgotten Continent, but the people of the Forgotten Continent can't enter Great Qin? Even if this sovereign agrees, the people of the Forgotten Continent will not agree. This sovereign must be fair and just. Either neither is allowed, or both are allowed. Choose for yourself. But you have to consider carefully, if the choice is not allowed, then this sovereign will not allow your Great Qin people to step into the Forgotten Continent. To put it bluntly, your Great Qin people can forget about entering the divine ruins. The Snow Python said. Emperor Hong fell silent, his heart incomparably bitter. The divine ruins were in the Forgotten Continent. And if the people of Great Qin wanted to enter the divine ruins, they had to pass through the Forgotten Continent. In other words, the Forgotten Continent had an innate advantage. So, he had no choice. In other words, as long as his Great Qin wanted to enter the divine ruins, then he had no qualifications to negotiate. Lu Xingqian glanced at Emperor Hong, and secretly sent a sound transmission to Qin Feiyang. To actually negotiate with the Snow Python, your great-grandfather really doesn't know what's good for him. His words were filled with a thick sense of ridicule. Qin Feiyang glanced at Lu Xingqian, raised his head to look at the space-time gate, and frowned slightly. Although he didn't have a good impression of Emperor Hong, for the sake of the big picture, using the space-time gate to connect the imperial capital and the central divine kingdom was indeed not appropriate. Frankly speaking, he didn't quite agree. But facing the powerful snow python, he had no choice. In fact, endangering Great Qin in Qin Feiyang's eyes was only secondary. After all, the snow python had also said very clearly that the passage opened by the space-time gate was only temporary and would close when the divine ruins disappeared. What worried Qin Feiyang the most was that after the two continents were connected, these people would most likely join forces to deal with him, because the masters of the two continents were all his enemies. For example, the chief pagoda master, the Mu family, the imperial preceptor, Emperor Hong, and so on. Last time in the Endless Sea, he set a trap to snatch the divine crystal, and the mysterious lady would definitely not let it go. So, for Qin Feiyang, how to prevent the people of the two continents from joining forces was the main point. The snow python glanced at Qin Feiyang's group and asked, "Who else has any objections?" Everyone fell silent. With the strength of the snow python, who would dare to have any objections? Since there are no objections, then you should prepare to open the divine ruins in half a month. After the snow python finished speaking, it disappeared without a trace. What exactly is the divine ruins? Even Emperor Hong is so eager. Could it be a treasure left behind by an ancient war god? Treasure? Does that mean that everyone can enter? If you can go in and get one or two divine objects if you're lucky, then you'll be rich. As soon as the snow python disappeared, the people in the imperial city were in an uproar. Qin Feiyang, Lu Xingqian, Old Qin, the state preceptor, Emperor Hong, and others looked at the space-time gate, their eyes flickering. After a while, Lu Xingqian retracted his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyang with a smile. "Brother Qin, your next situation may be very bad. Why don't you come with me to the Mujia? Although the Mujia may not be able to protect you, at least there's a way out." Go to the Mujia? Qin Feiyang was taken aback and glanced at Lu Xingqian. Looking at Lu Xingqian's sincerity, Qin Feiyang held back his laughter and said, "Forget it, I'm afraid I'll die faster if I go to the Mujia with you." Lu Xingqian was stunned and shook his head helplessly. "It seems that Brother Qin still doesn't believe me." "It's not that I don't believe you, it's because there are some things that you don't know yet. When you know, you'll definitely go crazy." Qin Feiyang smiled meaningfully. "Go crazy? What kind of storm haven't I seen before? It can't be." Lu Xingqian frowned. "When you go to the Mujia, you'll know." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and immediately opened a portal, ready to leave. "Qin Feiyang, come out and die for this old man." However, at this moment, an angry roar full of killing intent came from the Forgotten Continent. Following closely, an old man in white rushed out of the space-time gate like lightning and landed in the sky above the city. "You came just in time," Qin Feiyang murmured. Without looking up, just by listening to the voice, he knew that it was Wang Yuer's grandfather, Wang Su. "Qin Feiyang, if you have the guts, don't run away today." After Wang Su appeared, another old man appeared. He wore a mask and stood next to Wang Su. He glanced down at the imperial city, his killing intent soaring to the heavens. "Another old acquaintance has come," Qin Feiyang murmured. This voice belonged to the Mujia's white-robed old man, Mu Changyan. "What's going on?" People looked at Wang Su and Mu Changyan, their faces full of surprise. The portal had just opened, and someone from the Forgotten Continent came to find trouble with Qin Feiyang? When did he go to the Forgotten Continent? There were many people in the imperial city, such as the civilians, in fact, didn't know that Qin Feiyang was in the Forgotten Continent a few years ago. Naturally, they didn't know what Qin Feiyang did in the Forgotten Continent. But the imperial tutor. He looked at Wang Su and Mu Changyan, his eyes couldn't help but flicker. As for Qin Feiyang, he didn't pay attention to Wang Su and Wang Yu and directly entered the teleportation gate. "Don't even think about leaving." Chapter 1398. Old Man Qin raised his eyebrows and looked at Mu Zhongyan, coldly snorting. My great Qin will not allow you people from the forgotten continent to be presumptuous. Boom. Divine power surged out, roaring towards Mu Zhangyan. False god. Mu Zhangyan was stunned. But then, a hint of disdain climbed up the corner of his mouth. With a flick of his sleeve, the mighty divine power rolled in all directions, and Old Man Qin immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. What? Peak false god realm. Old Man Qin exclaimed, his face pale. Peak false god realm. What's going on? There's actually a peak false god realm, who came to find trouble with Qin Feiyang? Hearing Old Man Qin's exclamation, everyone's faces were full of horror. Old Man Qin, ignore them, follow me. Qin Feiyang's voice came from the teleportation gate. Old Man Qin glanced at Mu Zhangyan gloomily, turned around, and rushed into the teleportation gate. Little bastard, I will make you pay the price today. Mu Zhangyan's face was ferocious, and his whole body was like a comet, crashing into the teleportation gate. Qin Feiyang, a man, don't be a coward. Wang Su also roared and rushed towards the teleportation gate. What do you want to do? However, at this moment, Lu Xingqian took a step forward, blocking in front of Mu Zhangyan. Get lost. Mu Zhangyan didn't even look and directly shouted. Lu Xingqian was taken aback. His face darkened as he asked, say that again? His eyes were filled with a cold light. Mu Zhangyan was stunned, looking at Lu Xingqian. A trace of surprise climbed up on his face. You are? Yes, it's me. Lu Xingqian said expressionlessly. Mu Zhangyan's body trembled, and he hurriedly bowed. Greetings. But before he could finish his words, Lu Xingqian stretched out his hand to stop Mu Zhangyan. Take me to the forgotten continent. But Mu Zhangyan was about to talk about how Qin Feiyang had gone to the forgotten continent to set up a trap for the Mu family. But Lu Xingqian's gaze turned cold as he shouted. Do you need me to repeat myself? Mu Zhangyan's neck shrank. He could only suppress the anger in his heart. He took Lu Xingqian and flew towards the space-time gate. Looking at the space-time gate, the anger in Mu Zhangyan's heart was uncontrollable. The gate of time and space originally belonged to the Mu family, but now it was shared by everyone. He was unwilling to accept this. At the same time, Lu Xingqian looked at the gate of time and space as he passed through it. A hint of hostility flashed in his eyes. However, without any hesitation, he followed behind Mu Zhangyan and quickly disappeared in the direction of the Fire Phoenix mountain range. Although Mu Zhangyan left, Wang Su didn't. He stared at the disappearing portal and roared. Qin Feiyang, are you still a man? If you are still a man, come back immediately and explain it to this old man face to face. Old Wang, all these grievances are only between me and the Chief Tower Master. It has nothing to do with you. Why do you have to do this? Qin Feiyang's sigh came from the portal. What a joke. This old man is a member of the Chief Tower. The Chief Tower Master's business is naturally this old man's business. Ask yourself with your conscience, how did my Chief Tower treat you? How did I, Wang Su, treat you? Why do you repay kindness with ingratitude? The most excessive thing is that you actually deceived this old man's granddaughter's feelings. This is absolutely unforgivable. Wang Su roared. What is the Chief Tower? Is it very powerful in the forgotten continent? Everyone was suspicious. For many people present, today was the first time they heard the name of the forgotten continent, let alone the Chief Tower in the forgotten continent. But there was one point that they all understood. Qin Feiyang not only went to the forgotten continent, but also deceived this old man's granddaughter. This old man came to collect debts. However, Qin Feiyang's voice never sounded again. The portal also dissipated into the void. Wang Su stopped in the air above the plaza, looking at the place where the portal disappeared, his face ashen. The state preceptor and Emperor Hong looked at each other, flew in front of Wang Su, and cupped their hands. May I ask who you are? Wang Su turned a deaf ear. The state preceptor frowned and was about to speak. Wang Su finally retracted his gaze, looked at the two of them, and said indifferently, I am Chief Tower Elder Wang Su, who are you? Seeing Wang Su's arrogant attitude, the state preceptor was very unhappy in his heart, and said, This old man is the great Qin state preceptor. This is Lord Emperor Hong, the son of the Qin Emperor. What? The son of the Qin Emperor? Wang Su looked at Emperor Hong, his old face full of shock. Emperor Hong smiled and asked, "Elder Wang knows my late father?" "The name of the Qin emperor shakes the four seas, I naturally know." Wang Su cupped his hands and said, his attitude rather polite. Emperor Hong smiled and said, "May I ask Elder Wang, what has Qin Feiyang done in the Forgotten Continent all these years? To make you so angry?" "Humph. This bastard beast." Wang Su snorted coldly, looked at Emperor Hong and said, "Since you are the son of the Qin emperor, then you should also be Qin Feiyang's elder. When you have time, discipline him properly, so as to not bring a calamity to your great Qin in the future." Finished. Wang Su then soared into the air, disappearing into the gate of time and space. The state preceptor sneered. "Lord Emperor Hong, did you see that? This is Qin Feiyang. No matter where he goes, he is a rat crossing the street. Everyone wants to kill him." Emperor Hong glanced at the state preceptor, and also flew up into the sky, standing in front of the gate of time and space. The gate of time and space that was connected was like a large open door. Standing at the door, one could clearly see the situation on both sides. And opposite the gate of time and space was the main tower's Pill Tower Plaza. At this moment, the Pill Tower Plaza was also packed with people. There were people from the various super tribes, disciples of the main tower, and disciples of the Holy Tower and Holy Mountain. They also looked at the gate of time and space curiously, discussing animatedly. Among the crowd, a young man, about 25 or 26 years old, wearing a pair of big pants. His skin was slightly tanned, and his temperament was extraordinary. He looked at the gate of time and space and said, "Tell me, how is the young master doing in the Great Qin Empire?" That's right. This person was Wang Zicheng. Next to Wang Zicheng, there were 7 young men and women. Their appearances were all different and uneven. But without exception, whether it was their aura or temperament, they were all very outstanding. Standing in the crowd, like a crane in a flock of chickens, it was hard not to notice. They were the Black Monkey, Dead Face, Big Barbarian Bull, Ice Queen, Ghost Queen, and the Shunyi brothers. Hearing Wang Zicheng's words, the Black Monkey laughed and said, "Is there a need to say? As the descendant of the Qin Emperor, and also received the inheritance of the Qin Emperor, the young master will definitely be doing well in the Great Qin Empire." That's not necessarily true. Back then, the young master said that his relationship with the Great Qin Empire was not that good. Dead Face said with a straight face. That was back then. Now that the young master is so strong, even the Mu family dares to make trouble, let alone the Great Qin Empire. The Black Monkey immediately retorted. Speaking of the Mu family, I really admire the young master. Not only did he kill all the Mu family's war emperors, even Yigleo died in the Endless Sea. This method is really not something that the few of us can compare to. Big Barbarian Bull exclaimed. The Ice Queen, Ghost Queen, and the Shunyi brothers also nodded, their faces full of admiration. Wang Zicheng rolled his eyes and said to himself, "Now as long as we pass through the space-time gate, we can directly enter the Great Qin Empire's imperial capital. Should we go and take a look?" The Black Monkey and the others looked at each other, and were a little tempted. Shunyi frowned and said, "That's not good. We are now disciples of the main pagoda. If we want to go to the Great Qin Empire, shouldn't we ask the main pagoda master first?" Back then, the main pagoda master sent people to Qinghai to investigate. In the end, he took a fancy to the talent of Wang Zicheng and the others, and wanted to take them in for his own use. Wang Zicheng later asked Qin Feiyang, and Qin Feiyang also agreed to let them enter the main pagoda. So now, Wang Zicheng and the others, not only had they joined the main pagoda, but they had also become disciples of the Saint Peak. Moreover, the main pagoda master valued the 8 of them, and did not hesitate to nurture them. As a result, their cultivation was about to break through to the 3-star war emperor. Of course, compared to Viper and Dan Wangkai, they were still far from it. After all, Viper and Dan Wangkai were cultivating in the castle. 1 day was equivalent to 10 days. Ask for what? It's not like we're really working for the main pagoda. Moreover, with our talent, even if the main pagoda master knows that we went to the Great Qin Empire without permission, he won't say anything. Wang Zicheng said proudly. Then, hearing Wang Zicheng's words, Shini couldn't help but feel restless. Let's go. The black monkey secretly yelled, and the group of 8 immediately flew toward the dimensional gate in a grandiose manner. What are you going to do? Seeing this, the other main pagoda disciples immediately looked at the 8 of them and asked. The 8 of them completely ignored them and turned into streams of light, directly passing through the space-time gate. Stop. Emperor Hong was standing at the side, watching the 8 of them enter the imperial capital openly. He frowned slightly and shouted, Who are you? What qualifications do you have to control us? Wang Zicheng looked at Emperor Hong proudly. Emperor Hong was stunned. Other than Qin Feiyang, there was actually someone who dared to speak to him like this? Old man, don't block the way, okay? Just now, Lord Snow Python said that people from both continents can freely enter and leave. Do you want to disobey Lord Snow Python's orders? The black monkey shouted. The imperial preceptor below, as well as the people of the imperial city, were all dumbfounded as they watched this scene. Were these 8 people stupid? Did they know who the old man standing in front of them was? He actually dared to be so presumptuous. Emperor Hong's face twitched as he asked, Do you know my identity in the Great Qin Empire? Who cares about your identity? In short, a good dog doesn't block the way. Dead Face said indifferently. What's the point of talking nonsense with him? Just go around him. The big barbarian bull coldly snorted, and really went around Emperor Hong's side. That expression, that gaze, was completely treating Emperor Hong as air. Wang Zicheng and the others glanced at Emperor Hong, and also brushed past him. With a face full of excitement, they flew towards the city below without looking back. Emperor Hong's veins were bulging. But in the end, because he was afraid of angering the snow python, he still endured it, shook his head and sighed. Young people nowadays are really rampant. After saying that, he turned into a stream of light with a heart full of helplessness and disappeared from the back mountain of the imperial palace. The imperial preceptor looked at Wang Zicheng and the others with deep meaning, and also opened a teleportation gate, disappearing without a trace. Not long after Emperor Hong and the imperial preceptor left, a few bold people in the main tower also followed Wang Zicheng and the others and entered the sky above the imperial city, their eyes full of surprise. Similarly, you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.